Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-doo, right? We're getting right into it. Look at that. 2 salutes, and why not? I think the audience tonight is going to be a good one. A double salute. That's right, folks. Welcome to the Weekly Spinner Rack. I'll be your host tonight, Chris. Yeah, just like I am every week. There's no other hosts. Should have a co-host someday. That would be fun. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Why have I never thought of that? I should see if somebody wants to just like co-host just for like a night. That would be a blast. Anyway, sorry, that just popped into my head. So what is this? This is a weekly show about comics. We're going to do some reviews eventually about some comics that came out this week. We've got comic book news, of course. Everybody in the chat loves to riff on that with me. It's often a 2-segment show, right? Sometimes I'll do 3. There might be some art. There might be an interview. Folks, I think tonight might be a 4-segmenter. Yeah, 4 segments. By which I mean that we will be having an interview tonight. Let me just quickly give some shout outs to some of the lovely people here. Hey, it's my sister. That's always exciting. Aloha. Look at all that. Alonzi, John, nice to see you. Several new names. That's awesome. That makes me happy. As well as seeing a few familiar faces. West Coast Day Avengers calling me Cristobal Trophy. I'll take it. I don't know. You want to sit in some night? Maybe that could be fun. Get Jack to co-host. I'm sure we'll hear a meow eventually. That could be fun too. Although Sal does a show on Monday night, so that might be tricky. But yeah, maybe we should do that. You want to sit in with me? Oh my goodness! All right, this is getting popular. All right, tell you what. Let's get into an interview because I've got a guest waiting backstage. That's what we call it in the industry. This is a writer who has, in what I would consider a relatively short time because I'm old, worked, indie, self-published, mainstream. He's worked with Marvel, Dynamite. You've definitely seen his work. This is a writer who's worked on books like Cable and Savage Avengers at Marvel. At Dynamite, he's got a very popular book right now, Space Ghost. We've got a new one coming out soon, Captain Planet. He's doing Speed Racer over at Mad Cave. Folks, please give a friendly welcome to writer David Pepose. David, thank you so much for giving me some of your time today. I almost forgot to put in my earbud.
It's my pleasure. Chris, thank you so much for having me, and also for nailing my last name right on the first try. Thank you.
It's almost like I practiced by watching some other interviews. Yes.
But thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk comics with you tonight.
Oh, good. No, I appreciate you being available. I mean, everybody has a different story in this industry, but let's get to know you a little with like something easy. I'm going to give it an icebreaker.
Yeah.
I know that like working on comics can often just be like sitting quietly by yourself, working away,
Sure.
So here's my question. What is your go-to snack when you need energy or you just need to keep fueling yourself, but you need to stay working?
Man, great question. I usually will do one of 3 things. A banana is always a go-to. I'll do a Chobani yogurt drink because it's easy. And
healthy.
Then also I'll do I like the Kachava shakes. You can order the powder on Amazon.
I don't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's sort of like chocolate meets, I guess, mud, but it's healthy. And so usually I'll do any combination of those 3 to kind of get me over the finish line. I feel like soda and fried food, like I used to do that, and then cumulatively you start to slow down, and so I figure I'm trying to go as healthy as I can so I can keep writing and turning in scripts on time.
You got it, dude, because I mean, comics, so many people get sick working in this field.
Yeah.
It's really tough. So that's awesome that you're fueling yourself up with good stuff.
Yeah, I see it as, it's almost like being a professional athlete minus the athleticism. But, you have to be healthy. This is a career that doesn't really take sick days. So, everything you can do to, go to the gym, work, walk for 30 minutes, eat right. It all pays off dividends in the end.
That's really nice to hear. I obviously want to talk to you and promote your comics and stuff.
Sure.
But I also found something interesting interesting when I was sort of going through some of your interviews, but I didn't quite come across. Maybe you have talked about this before in detail. Apparently, before you worked in comics, I don't know exactly how long, but it sounds like you did some crime reporting as a career.
I did.
Really?
I was a newspaper reporter before I wound up doing all this. I worked in newsrooms in Boston, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles. And then my first full-time newspaper job was the Berkshire Eagle, Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And so I covered the police beat, court beat, state politics. It was, I'm not going to say that I drew from those stories necessarily in terms of the work, because a lot of that of rural local reporting, it's the nitty gritty, like there's, sometimes it's drugs, sometimes it's assault, but like not anything necessarily super flashy. But I think being a newspaper reporter in general was a huge help to me being a comics creator. Because it's one of those things, you're no longer afraid of a deadline. You're no longer afraid of a blank page. You know that you've got to write a certain runway, whether it's inch count or page count.
Right.
And you got to be resourceful in terms of just figuring out, like, okay, where am I going to find a story? And these are all skills that I use every single day as a
That's really cool to hear. That's really cool. Yeah, right. You're not literally adapting the stuff that you reported on, but it did give you a set of work skills that you could transfer.
Yes.
That's really cool.
It was conditioning, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think my career in general, I had such a weird zigzag career before going into comics that all this stuff, like I worked in publicity after that, and I did comics journalism for a long time at Newsarama. And all these things you wouldn't expect to necessarily be applicable to writing comics, but I've drawn skills from every single one of those careers, and I use them. They're my survival skills in a lot of ways to being a comics writer. So I think anybody who's wanting to be a comics writer, all experience matters. All experience counts, and you will draw something from that'll help you in the long run there too.
That makes plenty of sense, and I definitely agree. I think it honestly could, in a way, work for any job. You're going to learn certain skills, whether it's communication or leadership or, like you were just saying, deadlines and spacing. Like you never know. You never know.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's really cool. By the way, I didn't realize you were a fellow New Englander. I'm from south of Boston originally.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I went to undergrad at Brandeis, just in Waltham.
Very cool.
And so I spent a number of years in the Northeast. Now I'm in sunny Los Angeles, but I miss it. It was I certainly became an adult there. So
you didn't pick up an accent though. We need you to be like, I got some work over there.
I grew up in the Midwest, and so I've got that strong Missouri accent or lack thereof. But a lot of my friends growing up there, very strong, heavy Boston accents. And so I have a lot of affection for that.
I rattled off a small handful of your credits for an intro. And I'm curious, just for when you sit down to work, you've worked on, mainstream superhero books. You've worked on, you've done your own books like the OZ, like that was a crowd-funded book eventually. You've done stuff like more recently like Cable, Space Ghost, Speed Racer, Captain Planet. Do you have a particular genre though that you aim yourself at, or do you need like variety? Like what do you look for when you're looking for jobs right now?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in that, like, I like variety. I think anytime that I can kind of sample from different genres, and even from my earliest work, my very first book was a book called Spencer and Locke, and the elevator pitch for that was, what if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City? Right. So the genre mashup thing is sort of been part of my DNA since I started. But I like playing around with different genres because it allows me to flex different muscle groups. Rather than if I'm doing multiple titles that sort of feel tonally in a similar place, it's a little more challenging for me to figure out, like, how do I make these things feel more differentiated. But I think for me, it's every project I walk in with a to-do list of just stuff that I'm like, oh, hey, I would love to write, for example, a body swap story. That was on my bucket list for a long time. And sometimes I'm like, what's a genre I haven't hit? for example, a few years ago, I hadn't done anything in the horror sphere. And so as I was sort of trying to figure out projects, I managed to check off 2 things off that list to do a horror body swap story called The Devil That Wears My Face over at Mad Cave. And so the tricky thing is that you go into every project with a list of things that like you won't hit all of them, but you might hit a couple.
Yeah.
But then every time you finish a book, I wind up having like I've added more things on that to-do list, because I think every project I do in some capacity feels like a reaction to the one I did before it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like, oh, hey, I've done a bunch of crime books. So the next book I want to do, I want it to be a little more elevated, a little bit more fantastical.
Okay.
Or, I did, sort of back-to-back kind of, grim characters with, I did Moon Knight City of the Dead, then I did Punisher. And so with Space Ghost, I was like, oh, the found family element, that sort of acts as like a nice little antidote to sort of that grimness. So it's definitely a moving target. And so much of this business also is, you only have so much control over it. Like you can pitch your own stuff, particularly as far as the creator sphere of things, but you'd be surprised, or at least I've been surprised. Sometimes the projects that are the most satisfying are the ones that you never saw coming. I didn't see Space Ghost coming at all. That was Dynamite approaching me. And it was one of those, as they approached me and I talked with a couple friends about it, they were like, I think you do a great job on Space Ghost. So as I watched the cartoons to really kind of learn the mythology, I learned like, oh, there's like a really interesting emotional found family story to all this with Space Ghost and Jace. And so, then that's wound up being one of the most satisfying books of my entire career, but I didn't seek that one out. So it really is like, you sort of, my philosophy for all this is you take as many swings as you can to sort of try to get yourself in the right place at the right time. And then the universe is going to take care of the rest. You're going to get hit with stuff that you'll never have anticipated. And it's sort of half the job as the comics creator is to figure out like, can I pull this off? Is this something that feels natural that I can speak to in a competent way? And then kind of just, riding that wave until you sort of lock on what kind of story you want to tell.
I think that makes so much sense. I've often told people that, you do create your own opportunities. You don't know exactly when the right thing is going to fall in front of you, but you build towards those opportunities. I mean, like, I feel like even just like having an audience on YouTube, like I've cultivated the audience I want of like, smart and kind people that love this storytelling medium, but you create your own opportunities. Yes. I did do my research knowing that we'd be talking just in case. So like I read a bunch of not Captain Planet, that one I haven't read yet, but Space Ghost. I read a bunch of that. I'd read Punisher. I'd read Savage Avengers. The Space Ghost. I've always been a big fan of Alex Toth.
Yeah.
But I'm too young to have grown up watching that cartoon.
Same. Yeah.
And then there's this new book of yours is Captain Planet, and I was like too old for that cartoon. Sure. I was like in college and stuff like so. I'm just like using this as sort of an example. Suppose a guy like me is coming through Comic-Con. You've got like a table or something.
Yeah.
If you're trying to catch my interest, because I pause, like what kind of stuff can you tell me about, the books that you're doing at Dynamite, for instance, to capture me? Like, what I mean? Like, I just, it's not that I'm against them. It's just like, I have blind spots.
Of course. Well, you're really the target audience for these sorts of things. For me, I'm not trying to write my books. Like, I don't want to preach to the choir. I want converts, So I try to write everything as accessibly as I can. All of my books, Captain Planet, Space Ghost, Speed Racer, this is brand new continuity. So you don't have to have watched any of the original cartoons in order to appreciate our story. But I watched all the episodes. So that way, if you are a diehard fan, you'll recognize certain characters and Easter eggs that we're going to thread throughout the story. But for me, I live and die based on the elevator pitch. Space Ghost, I describe that as Batman meets the Mandalorian. A cosmic vigilante who rescues 2 orphans and trains them to become his sidekicks. And then meanwhile, Captain Planet, I've pitched that as X-Men meets Avatar: The Last Airbender. About 5 ordinary people from around the world who are given the 5 elemental rings of Gaia, and they wind up going on the run from a corrupt billionaire that wants to steal their power.
I like that.
And
Yeah.
I think
getting to the core of what it is, and finding something real there.
And a lot of it comes with practice. That's why I like doing signings. That's why I like doing conventions, is that it's a great way to just kind of meet your customers one-on-one.
Yeah.
And really get a sense of like, okay, like if you pitch something as this meets this, maybe that reference means something to me, but doesn't mean something to them. So I'll sort of recalibrate. I practiced these books a lot at Comics Pro, the Comics Pro Summit recently that was here in California. So talking with retailers and being like, oh, okay, like X-Men meets Avatar, that you understand those comp points.
Definitely.
So it's always an ongoing process. Every interview is a chance to sort of refine your pitch. But for me, my goal is I want to give people something that's a little off the beaten path, but I also just want to make sure that it's accessible, that it like stands on its own 2 feet, that, I'm a big believer that every comic is somebody's first, but I recognize that there are barriers for entry, and I want to make sure that my books are written with as few of those barriers that I can do.
That's exciting, and I wanted to pay you a compliment. I should have said this earlier. You do an incredible job of marketing yourself, David, because you're on social. Sure, lots of creators are.
Sure.
You've got a very nice website, very clean, very easy to understand, very easy to navigate. And then you do email sort of newsletters with updates on what's coming up and what you've just accomplished. There's not tons of creators I find doing that. I know Jim Zub does it, and I think it's a really good idea for connecting with your audience. I was curious, here's the question part of it. Have you found that any one thing that you're doing is reaching your audience more than another?
I wish I don't know if I know any metrics for that. And you did pay me one compliment that I unfortunately can't accept. I've been so lax with my newsletter in the last year or so, just because I find myself in that weird no man's land of I'm writing stuff, but I either can't announce it, or by the time that it's already out, then it's hard to get too into the nitty gritty without spoiling things. I see people like Chip Zdarsky, for example, or Matt Rosenberg, and I'm very envious of their ability to stay on top of their deadlines, but also stay on top of their newsletters. I'll admit I've been lax in that score, but I think for me, the things that I am able to do, staying current on social media, making sure that if people take the time to, write or comment about my work, that I share that. Things like I send out, press email, when I have a new book.
I guess that's sort of what I was talking about too. I say newsletters, I'm including the press emails within that, because I just think that's really smart. You never know which one will hit with which person.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a numbers game. Everything worth doing in my life, I've discovered, is a numbers game, whether it was meeting my wife, through online dating in New York City, or, knocking on every door in the industry until I could sell my first book, to knocking on every door at Marvel until they finally hired me for something. It's always just, every overnight success is like a product of many, many, many years of iteration and repetition and failure and rethinking of things. So I think, sending out, emails, like I send out press emails, I send out retailer emails, head of FOC. That I think is that's that's something that can be helpful if you take the time to build that on your own. I've had people ask me in the past, like, oh, hey, like, can you send me like a list of retailer emails? And I'm like, that's not going to be helpful to you, because I called all those shops personally and told them, who I was, and got their contact information, they consented to that. And so they know it's me. But I think, this whole business, I think, not only is it a long-term thing, it's a marathon, it's a marathon composed of sprints, but it's also, it's built on relationships, and it's built on trust. I think, and that's something, none of it comes overnight. And it's not always linear, but I think if you can sort of show people time and time and time and time again that, hey, I can deliver a product that's of, X level of quality. I can, be grateful for your time and your support. I can prove that hopefully I'm not a jerk. I'm not a crazy person.
No.
After a while, people start and I get it. It's hard to build trust. It's hard to build trust in the year 2025. Let me tell you.
That's true.
Everything going on in the world, but also just like how, scattershot, the level of quality of entertainment can be, and also just the absolute surplus of choices, both in the comics industry and outside of comics. So I think for me, it's just every opportunity. They say there's no second chance for a good first impression, but I actually firmly disagree with that. I think it's every chance should be you acting like it's a first impression, because for somebody it's going to be. I'm hoping, there's somebody watching this show right now who might not be familiar with my work, but I'm hoping that after, they watch this interview, maybe they'll check out Space Ghost.
I hope the same thing. I hope the same thing.
Out. But yeah, it's always a numbers game, and I couldn't tell you which thing is most effective. I think it's a confluence of all of it, that it really it starts to act as a force multiplier. The more vectors you can take, the more it really does pay off in the end.
Cool. I appreciate you sharing that, because there's lots of people that are watching this that are, lots of people love certain mainstream books, but there's also a good amount of my audience that, do indie and self-publishing stuff themselves and are looking for just what has worked for other people. And so hopefully that helps. I will say one thing I really like about reading your comics, there is a consistency and there's an authenticity. So like Space Ghost is a pretty fantastical book. It's a space-based superhero, folks. But I love how you connected a couple elements that you've already touched on telling us, but
sure.
He comes from a planet where everybody's gone. He's sort of it, and in the cartoon, he's got that, and he's got these two teen sidekicks. They don't really go too much into the detail of how any of that works. But your comic really has him sort of adopting them and becoming a father figure, that found family idea. And it makes so much more sense than just you two kids, why don't you fight some monsters too? That would be so irresponsible if that's all it was.
It was. Thank you first off for saying all that. I think for me, it came from a couple different places. I mean, first off, exactly what you said. It's just when you're doing a reboot like this, like Space Ghost or like Captain Planet or Speed Racer, you're trying to figure out how do you build a level of internal consistency? How do you just make the whole thing make sense?
Yeah.
And so for example, Blip, why, Blip on the one hand is such a specific choice that you're well, it'd be leaving Blip out would be like making a sundae without the cherry, it's that core detail that makes the whole thing. But all right, so how do you introduce the monkey into the whole thing? And so we kind of recontextualized him as the MacGuffin of really our whole meta story, which you will see where that pays off this week in Space Ghost 12. But for the kids, sort of on a bigger macro level, it was okay. My experience with Space Ghost prior to doing the research to writing it, I had heard of Coast to, I watched a few episodes of Coast to Coast, that was sort of my intro.
Sure.
But there was Joe Kelly's miniseries with Ariel Olivetti. I read that when I was an intern at DC right out of college, and I remember thinking oh, he's an actual superhero. I didn't know that, and so I filed that away. That was in 2000. That was in 2008. So fast forward 15 years. Dynamite asked me to about Space Ghost, and so I start watching the cartoons, and I'm immediately struck by how much of a presence Jan and Jace are. We meet them before you meet Space Ghost in the first episode, and that's when I was okay, I think I've got something here. Joe Kelly really kind of focused in on the sort of Batman Begins standalone origin of Space Ghost as a character. So I didn't want to belabor that too much, because that's me showing up 20 years late to Joe Kelly's party. But nobody had really dug in that deep into how did he pick up these two kids. And I think I drew from a lot of inspirations. There's Batman Along Halloween. There was the Confession arc from Astro City was a huge on all this. Robin year one and Batgirl year one. Just I like that idea of like, oh yeah, being a sidekick, it is kind of the ultimate superhero wish fulfillment. It's this idea of like, you can be a superhero too, and you can hang out with this cool, brooding, half Batman, half Superman, kind of space character. And then showing like, sort of the highs and lows of all that. Showing that like, what is it like to sort of build that kind of family, and sort of showing the reciprocal nature of that relationship, how Space Ghost makes the kids feel safe, but the kids make Space Ghost a better person.
Yeah.
And I think another part of that was
nice.
it was autobiographical as well. My younger siblings are triplets, and they were born 10 days shy of my 9th birthday.
Okay. So, that's a bit of a gap. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was certainly a life adjustment, Yeah. I kind of felt like the dinosaur right when the meteor hit, in that you're used to doing things a certain way, especially when you're an only child, and then suddenly your whole life blows up and you start counting things in threes. And so that bit really, I think I drew a lot from that.
Okay.
When writing
That's cool.
Space. And so I think, it winds up being a combination of like, what's the most emotional through line you can find, but also, is there anything in your own life that you can draw from?
Yeah.
I think that is the most natural and flows the best. And then
I think that's the stuff that gives a story its verisimilitude. It feels a little more real. It hits a little harder than just telling an adventure. You got to pull something real in, I think.
Yeah, because otherwise you run into that risk of making comics that are just about comics.
Yeah.
And that sort of gets very insular and self-referential, and sort of, I think, divorces a comic from like what I think is like the core appeal of something like that, which is there's always something universal. There's always something that the reader should be able to relate to. And there should always be that sort of, especially in a superhero book, that delineation where it's not just superheroes dealing with other superhero problems,
Yep.
Tom Brevoort mentions this a lot, where he's like, what makes a superhero? It's not punching out the bad guy, it's saving innocent people.
Hopefully.
And so being able to do that, I think, that winds up, I think, really informing the way I do things, and trying to find like a human story behind all the spectacle. I think that makes everything a lot stronger in the end.
I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, and I hope it does interest some viewers into trying your work after they hear your approach there. I'd love to like ask something that's a little more technical.
Sure.
I don't know if there even is a clear answer, but because you've worked on both, like sort of superhero comics, I'll call them, as well as a bunch of different licensed properties.
Sure.
I'm very curious. When you do a licensed book, do you have a shorter amount of time because there's like an approval process, or do all comics have about the same editorial sort of process? I've literally never asked that of anyone.
No, it's a great question. It really depends on the licensor, I'd say. Because as far as like actual development is concerned, I actually tend to take more time on the licensed stuff, just because I need to watch all the cartoons. Whereas like if I'm working on Marvel, like I'm reading Marvel every week, like I'm pretty up to speed on what's going on, and I know where all the bodies are buried to as much as I can know them.
Yeah.
And so whereas like, Space Ghost, I probably took, I don't know, 2 weeks just watching the cartoons. I watch every episode.
Cartoons.
I would take detailed notes on every single one. So, and same thing with Speed Racer. That was like 50 episodes. So that takes a little bit longer to just like learn everything. But as far as like approvals and the like go, it depends on the licensor. Like I've been really lucky that like most of my licensed work has been, with Warner Brothers, Space Ghost and Captain Planet. And they have been like they've given us a ton of latitude on those. Like I can tell you, Space Ghost, I think I've gotten 2 notes in the year that I've written it. And one was in issue 1. They that line "Holy Flark," that was a request from them, is just, can you have them say something a little more spacey? And then it was in the Zorak issue. when he slashes the warden, they were like, "Can you make that blood like a silhouette?" So it wasn't even like a note for me; it was a note.
Yeah,
for
that's not bad.
And I can tell you the only note I've gotten for Captain Planet thus far was it's actually out there so you can see it. It was a preview on issue 2. We have an opening montage of Captain Planet through the ages, and that was actually a recommendation from Warner Brothers.
Okay,
They were like, "Hey, can we add in a little more mythology to Captain Planet in the second
that's
issue?"
kind of cool.
And it worked out. It was a great note. So
yeah,
they've been great. I feel like Tatsunoko with Speed Racer, I haven't worked with them quite as much. We're still fairly early on in the run.
right.
They've been really good. I know they've got a few more moving parts, just as far as like approvals, especially because like they're all the way in Japan. But they've been great. I feel like for me, what winds up being helpful with licensors is you give them as much information as you can. So that way they kind of know where what your plans are, where you're going to land. If there's any finer details that they want to finesse, they can do it there.
Yeah.
And that way, once that's approved, it makes it a lot smoother in the scripting stage. I mean, knock on wood, hopefully I'm not cursing myself. But I like so far in Speed Racer, I'm 3 issues in, and like I think they've given me like one tiny finesse note on like one line. I've been really lucky. I mean, I've worked with a lot of licensors over my career so far, between Warner Brothers and Tatsunoko and Conan Properties and Lucasfilm. And every licensor has its own kind of tone and way of doing things. And it depends on the project. Like some licensors will be more protective than others, depending on what the project is. So, yeah, I think you never really know until you're in it.
Licensors aren't perfect, though. I mean, Conan Properties did approve this guy. Seems a little inappropriate to me.
And I remember working with them. They were very helpful in terms of like when I was doing Savage Avengers, I knew Marvel very well. I didn't know Conan quite as well. And I realized the reason they asked me to do that book is because that's the mashup book. And I do a lot of mashup books.
That's cool.
But Conan Properties were very helpful in terms of like I would write something and I'd just be like, this seems like just window dressing details, and they're like, actually that's a whole country of people that wouldn't do that thing. Here's what we could do instead. And so that they were the licensors can be very helpful in helping navigate continuity if you're not as familiar with it. But that was definitely a big lesson in terms of how much homework I was going to do moving forward.
What should the audience take away as action items? Like what is coming up, in other words, that they should be keeping their eyes out for or talking to their shop about ordering?
Yeah. So final order cutoff is actually today for Captain Planet issue 2 and Space Ghost Annual, which is coming out in June, which is sort of the capstone of our first year of stories on that book. So if your comic shop's still open, you can probably slide something in under the wire.
West Coast and Hawaii.
Yes. You can call them right now. But also Space Ghost issue 12 is going to be hitting comic shops this Wednesday. Nice. And that's sort of part 2 of our big Council of Doom 3-parter. Cable, Love, and Chrome is going to wrap up on the 28th, issue 5. For those who've been reading it, we learned the identity of Cicada at the end of issue 4. So now Cable and Cicada are going to have a big time spanning just head to head. And that's going to really kind of like wrap up our time traveling Fault in Our Stars kind of storytelling. And then, I think, beyond that, Speed Racer is going to kick off July 30th. So you can pre-order issue 1 today. And then I have an all ages graphic novel coming out in October, 10-Ton Titan Terrier with paper cuts, which is available for pre-order right now. Yeah, it's Pokemon meets Pacific Rim. So about an alien battle suit that crash lands along with a bunch of kaiju eggs, but the only creature on Earth capable of turning on the suit is an 11-inch tall terrier. So
I like that quite a bit, actually. I'm a big
super fun
nerd for kaiju stuff. That's good.
Yeah, so an age appropriate Pacific Rim, essentially. But I'm very excited for kids to finally have something on my table I can sell to children. So very much in sort of the Pixar kind of vein. So yeah, you can do all those
That's
things,
awesome.
and then you can follow me on social if you'd like. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Pepose D. It's my last name, first initial. I'm at David Pepose Comics on Facebook. There's my website, davidpepose.com. And then one day I will update my newsletter, so you can subscribe to that. It's bit.ly/pep news. It's my newsletter, Pep Talks. So
I like
yeah,
that.
thank you so much for having me, man. I
No,
really appreciate you taking the time.
David, I appreciate you giving all of us some of your time, as well as giving such insightful answers. Continued success. Being offered this interview is what prompted me to go ahead and read Space Ghost. And I really like what you and Andy Lau are doing. Great artist. It's really, really consistent. Very good. Thank you for your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Have a great rest of your show.
All right. That's exactly what we're going to do. Take care. Tell you what, you'll get one of the classic double salutes. You are.
Thank you.
Wow. I got a double salute back. That's like the second time that's ever happened. Thank you very much.
Of course. Have a great
night. Thanks everybody for asking such kind questions. I'm sorry I didn't get to ask absolutely everything, but I also want to keep the show moving, so it's a balance. Boy, what a kind, insightful guy. Can you imagine going from writing crime news stories to comics? That seems like an interesting career path. That deserves more introspection. I hope other interviewers pick up and develop on that. I like that story. Let me go ahead and jump to the news next. I'll add a little thing here. Another good David out there. Yeah. Thanks for all of you for being so nice. That was interesting to me. All right. So yeah, you can see the left side, the nostalgia stuff that David is working on. I don't need this earbud anymore. And on the right, we've got some of the news items I'll be talking about. So let's get into it. Oh, please. I can't not mention Toth. If there's a chance to at least just mention him in passing, it's going to happen. Oh, good. Glad you read it. All right. So DC has an interesting book, a heist comic. And I love a good genre mashup. The idea of doing something like a heist story within a superhero world, that intrigues me. So DC announced this. It's called Cheetah and Cheshire Rob the Justice League. But it is, I'll just note, by 2 Eisner winners. Greg Rucka, great comics writer, done tons of Batman stuff, done tons of great crime books. And Nicola Scott, Wonder Woman Historia. If you haven't read that, that's quite a great comic. Great team there. And the story is going to follow DC villains Cheetah and Cheshire. They're going to have to form a crew. It's not just the 2 of them. They're going to form a crew. It's going to be villains, or at least bad guys. I don't know what you want to call them. And they're going to attempt a heist on the Justice League Watchtower, which basically these days houses just about every superhero. So it's a borderline stupid idea, which means I want to see how something like that potentially gets pulled off. It just sounds like fun. So that's going to be a 6-issue series, and it begins on my birthday, August 6th. Could be cool. The art and writing team there is pretty darn high. Oh, I didn't read that one. The Godzilla heist book has been good. That's nice to hear. And there's another person's. The title is very much like telling you what you will get. So that is good. That is fine. Just thought I'd mention that. We'll go on to some other news too. Did I get that right? Yeah. Dan Waters apparently is going to write Twilight Zone. You know what? I'm going to explain why, but does anyone in the audience happen to already know why this particular issue of an old Twilight Zone comic is kind of a key collector's issue? I figure that there's a small chance that at least West Coast Avengers may have come across this book before. In fact, good timing, yes. First Frank Miller published art. His first pro work was on that book. But anyway, Twilight Zone. Yep, good got plenty of people. Yep. Okay. All right. So anyway, IDW had announced their horror imprint, IDW Dark, back at last year's New York Comic Con. And that's going to have both their original titles like Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, as well as licensed books. I think that they said they'd be doing a book based, for instance, on the Smile movies, things like that. According to Bleeding Cool, so this isn't confirmed anywhere else, but it's probably true, Dan Waters has been hired to write the book. And I know a lot of people in the chat have been telling me every week that the book I should be reading is Batman Dark Patterns, which is one he's writing. I've read some of his other stuff. I liked his Creature from the Black Lagoon book with Skybound. I liked G.I. Joe Destro quite a bit in the Energon universe. So, yeah, and Dan Waters has a bigger history than that, of course, but I'm not here to list everything. I'm not a completionist in that regard. Anyway, the Twilight Zone show has inspired several runs in the past. The longest run was over 90 issues. I forget exactly how many, but over 90 issues. And that was by Gold Key with, yes, the first professional work by Frank Miller. Dynamite also did some Twilight Zone comics, I want to say in the 2010s. So, but it's been a little while, and IDW is bringing it back. Good show. Very good show. The original? Please. Fantastic. I do like anthology horror as well. I tend to prefer like a full 22 pages at least for a horror story as compared to sort of a 6 to 8 pager. You're really, boy, that it's hard to build up tension in such a short time. It is definitely doable. There were plenty of really cool EC comics that would set up some sort of somewhat scary premise and then give you a twist. You know, the Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror books, that stuff, crime suspense stories. It can be done. But I like something to, when they can, build up a little more tension, make me care about the characters. Oh, I heard about that Dan Waters wrote for Titan, writing their Doctor Who books. Yeah. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that comic, no. Yeah, that's true. The 80s reboot. And then there was even the more recent reboot that was hosted by Jordan Peele. It was okay. It wasn't bad. I liked the episode. They did one episode that was a riff on the classic William Shatner Twilight Zone episode where he's the only one that sees a gremlin on the plane. And in the modern one, it's Adam Scott. And but for today, somebody acting like that, everybody thinks he's a terrorist. It's a really good, that was a good episode. That was a really cool one. Hey, look at that, a super chat. I'm rich. No, thank you, Steve. Let's see. I should work for Pepsi. You should at this point and promote sugar-free Mountain Dew Baja Blast. Going to Fan Expo Philly this Saturday. And of course, Steve always tells us that he loves his Mets. Have fun in Philly. I've run out of my Mountain Dew Baja Blast Zero Sugars because I don't really have a Walmart near me, and that's the only place that carries them. But I have a regular sugar-free Mountain Dew. It's good. Thank you for the support. Rod Serling was very cool. Imagine if you will. I can't do a good Rod Serling impression, I guess. No, I can't do it. Oh yeah, similar, just a little bit later. And Outer Limits, yeah, I like anthology horror-esque shows. Because I'll just go a step further. Growing up, I liked some of the syndicated garbage that was like horror anthology. Friday the 13th, this series, anyone? Which just has like two kids and their uncle like looking up haunted relics every week, and you're like, well, where's Jason Voorhees? They're like, no Jason Voorhees. There's Freddy's New Nightmares, where Freddy's like, here's a scary story, and that's about all he had to do with them. They brought back Outer Limits. They brought, Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side. There was like a really good run there, kind of 80s into the 90s of horror anthology for syndicated TV. Hey, Shane, nice to see you. Shane is the owner of local comic shop, Atomic Comics, down in Tacoma, and has been running that for a long time. They just had a big anniversary. Let's see. Thank you, Steve. Rod Serling, born in Syracuse, lived in Binghamton. Freddy's Nightmares. Did I call it Freddy's New Nightmares? I probably did, because I'm thinking of the movies. You watched that stuff. Yeah, the Twilight Zone in the 80s was Forrest Whitaker. Exactly. Yeah. Or wait, was that even later than the 80s? That was, I want to say, when UPN came about, right? So that would have been like late 90s, early 2000s. Anyway, we're getting deep into the weeds here. Twilight Zone comic coming. No confirmation from IDW on any artists, how many issues, when. This is the only thing we know is Dan Waters, Twilight Zone, IDW. Oh, dude, it's Jimmy My Food. Since Jim is here, let me take a moment to promote my pal and say Jim has launched his own channel on YouTube, which I think is a really good idea for promoting yourself these days. And he's already got some interesting stuff up there. He hosted a really long, in-depth, deep dive for the 30th anniversary of his creator-owned book, Girl Scouts. And it was so interesting to see the art change over the years and have Jim explain what was influencing him at the time. Our editor, Jamie, was the sort of co-host there and helped manage things. You got to see the original pilot for a TV show that never happened, though, but that Jim aired the whole thing by, what's the director's name? David, he works for SNL these days. I forget. I'm bad at names. I shouldn't try. Anyway, it was a good episode. Steve, you're so kind. Speaking of Rod Serling, last year, AA Mets affiliate did a Rod Serling promo night. They were the Binghamton Creatures. I like that. Rod Serling statue in Binghamton. I would like to see that. Shane, nice to have you here. Shane runs Scratch Comics out of the UK. They do some really nice books. All sorts of cool books. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was fun to join in. Mike Diva. Thank you, Mike Diva. Yeah. Jim is friends with Mike Diva. If you're an SNL nerd or a music video nerd, that's very impressive. Trust me. I agree that it was a good logo that they have here. So I'll continue with the news. Lovely to have so many different voices in the chat. I get distracted easily. We should keep going. Ninja Turtles gets some more spin-offs. We already knew that Shredder was getting a new spin-off. Now there's two more. That might be IDW's sort of move right now, is sort of spin-offs of stuff that's doing well. Godzilla, Ninja Turtles. I get it. It might be their move. So anyway, this is again from Bleeding Cool, and they reported that, here's their sentence. Quote, IDW Publishing is going to put out a new Ninja Mutant Ninja Turtles. That isn't even close. And I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's what I meant to say. That thing. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Whatever. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles spin-off comic starring Casey Jones. Art by Amanke Nuhelapan. And covers by Danny Earls. Friend of the channel, Danny Earls. Who's done some beautiful Ninja Turtles covers already for them. Is going to do covers for this Casey Jones book. Comes out the 17th of September. What I wonder, though, is this may not be following Arnold Jones, the real or original Casey Jones, because in the comics right now, Casey's in a coma. And the latest issue of Ninja Turtles had April telling him that she was going to sort of, carry on his legacy. I wonder if this would be a stealth April O'Neil book where she takes on the vigilante identity of Casey Jones. It's just wild speculation, but it could be. It's my friend Chuck to make fun of me, which he can do because he's a friend. Let's see. I like turd teenage ninja mutant ninja turtles. I can't say it without laughing because of how embarrassed I am at screwing that all up. Thanks, Chuck. And congrats on how your kid did at his Taekwondo first sparring event. That was cool. I won't like dox him with anything else. I haven't seen the trailer yet, but I did see that it exists, so I will get to that. Yes. All right, and then the second one. This is perhaps more interesting in a way. IDW has sent out solicitations. Doesn't have a lot of information, but in for comic book stores to order from. A book called TMNT Journeys #1, written by Peter Laird. Yeah, co-creator of the Ninja Turtles, Peter Laird. He doesn't do a whole lot with Ninja Turtles these days. He's mostly retired. Kevin Eastman, of course, does covers, the occasional interior art. Laird, was credited with the plot for the Last Ronin book, which is a really good book. That was an idea that they had together, but hasn't written anything in quite a long time. So I don't know if this is like, unearthed archive material or if this is something brand new. I don't know. But anytime you put one of the original creators on anything Ninja Turtles, personally, I'm going to check it out. So that's scheduled for August 10th. You've more than made up for it with the $2. For $2, my friends can, rip on my mistakes. For $2, yes. Yeah, I know he was credited as a producer and stuff, and he got some input on that 2003 animated show. For instance, he didn't want there to be that fifth female turtle that they had just created the year before on the live action show. Things like that. But yeah. It could be a reprint series. I hope it's something new. That's what I'm hoping for. I was almost remembering a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle song, but I don't think I know the lyrics, so never mind. I can't do it. Here's some more IDW news. Event Horizons in comic book form. It's back, Bart. It's back in POG form. No, it's back in comic book form. I did. You had like a spinning wheel over my head instead of, what do you call it? Like a light bulb. I like Event Horizon. I don't know if that's controversial or if at this point enough time has passed that people have reassessed it and they're like, yeah, Event Horizon is a good movie. They're making a prequel. IDW is making a prequel to the 97 sci-fi comic book movie. Comic book movie? I meant horror movie. Good Lord. Good Lord. By Paul Anderson. Maybe I should clarify. Paul W.S. Anderson. As in Paul Resident Evil, Mortal Kombat Anderson. That Paul Anderson. We're not talking... I don't know, Punch Drunk Love or whatever. So IDW is going to release an official 5-issue miniseries. Event Horizon Dark Descent starts August 20th. But here's where it makes sense for this to exist. It's going to tell what happened to the original crew of the Event Horizon ship that went through a black hole. If you've seen the movie, I won't spoil it because honestly, you should go see it. Holy shit, wait a minute. Trash movie bonanza material. Why didn't I not think of this sooner? Yup, that's what I want to do. I've been having a hard time picking between the movies I want to do. Jim, I think I just decided I really want us to do Event Horizon. I just realized that I would love to talk about that movie because I sincerely think it's fun. I think it's cool. It's, a ship does faster than light travel basically, and it experiences something there in that like sort of space between space. And it gets supernatural. It gets so cool. But something happened to a crew and we never see it. We just see the main characters of this movie investigating what happened. That could be really cool. It's a classic. Done and done. All right, buddy. I don't know why that like hits me hard, but it hits. I want to do it. All right, I'll reach out to you. Let's see. This is going to be written by Eisner winner Christian Ward, and I thought his Batman City of Madness was very disturbing and cool. I'm excited to see Christian Ward on something like this. Illustrated by Tristan Jones. I got to be honest, haven't seen anything by them before. Colorist Pip Martin, I have seen because that Texas Blood is fantastic. I know Virus starred Jamie Lee Curtis. I remember Virus. That was one of the very early Dark Horse Comics movies. There was Virus and The Mask with Jim Carrey and Barbed Wire. They all sort of came out in the same era. Garth Ennis not writing this one, but thanks for the support. Thank you. I mean, I think a lot of people will call it garbage, and I'm going to take a controversial opinion here and say I kind of like most of his movies. Soldier with Kurt Russell, that movie's fun. That movie's good. And what else? I think like I want to say the fourth Resident Evil is just the total blast. I don't know. Mortal Kombat rules. Resident Evil, the first one, is also really, really good. Yeah. So I don't know. You know, people sort of like people like pick on Paul W.S. Anderson, but I don't see him in the same sort of sphere as another person that he gets compared to, Uwe Boll. Like Uwe Boll movies, no, I don't enjoy those. They're garbage. Just not even fun to joke about. Paul W.S. Anderson, a little trashy, but I'll tell you something. Another one, which is basically a comic book movie, Alien versus Predator. Do I want it to be like the mainstream continuity for both Predator and Alien? Not really. But do I think that that first crossover movie was fun? Yeah, personally, I really do think it was. Now, the sequel, I've never seen. Even though I've watched it, I've never seen, because it is the physically darkest movie to ever exist. You cannot make anything out. We will review a Troma movie at some point. Soldier is an unofficial sequel to Blade Runner. It was made using the ideas from that, yes. Anyway, I'm moving on. I got really deep in the weeds on that one. Marvel officially announced a Black Cat series, which is good news for Adam Hughes fans. I'm an Adam Hughes fan. Come on, that's good art. So yeah, they've confirmed it. It's going to begin in August. It's written by G. Willow Wilson. I like G. Willow Wilson's writing quite a bit, to be honest. That's another person, like her Ms. Marvel run. It's great. That's a really good comic. Drawn by Gleb Melnikov, and I know that name, but I don't know if I've read any real comics that I can remember by Gleb. Anyway, this is Wilson's first ongoing series at Marvel since she did Ms. Marvel. The story is going to follow Felicia Hardy doing her best to be a superhero instead of a cat burglar. Basically, this is going to somehow flow from the events of Amazing Spider-Man and his battle with a new villain called Hellgate, which doesn't interest me at all. But yeah, Poison Ivy did so well. You know, it was going to be a limited series, and then they just kept expanding and expanding it. So I'm sure Marvel's hoping for something similar there. Variant covers by Ji Hyung Lee, Peach Momoko, and Simone DeMeo. Pretty cool. What else do I want to say? Just that, like, when this was just a rumor, I said this as well. I think the timing is interesting. Marvel launching a Black Cat ongoing right now, basically a year or so before the next Spider-Man movie. They usually go for synergy in these things. So I wouldn't be surprised if Black Cat is in the next Spider-Man movie. I'll just say that. I would not be surprised. You know, I foolishly have not reached out. I did meet her once at a local convention, and she was fantastic. So kind. Gave me some free comics. Just like didn't know who I was, by the way. Just she was doing it for everybody. Very kind, very generous with her time. Peach is a she is very unique talent because she's so creative, but she's such a workaholic too. And it's awesome to have a workaholic in comics. Wow. I haven't read the Poison Ivy run yet, and I keep meaning to, so I should pick that up in trades. All right. Also in Marvel, I'm not talking about the Thunderbolts movie at all. I am only talking about the comic here. I wanted to let you know that they have renamed their Thunderbolts comic. Wonder why they did that. I wonder. Marvel had previously announced they were going to have a new book. They had this cover art here, and it was called Thunderbolts with an asterisk. Well, this week, Marvel revealed that the book is actually called New Avengers. Huh, that's an interesting comic book piece of news. I'm not talking about the movie. I'm talking about the comics. It's going to feature a new team of heroes. This team going up against what I'm calling a perverted version of the Marvel heroes that made the original Illuminati. The bad guys are called the Killuminati, which I think is fun for a comic book villain. They're made up of corrupted clones. Well, I'm not 100% sure if that's Bruce Banner or if that might be Amadeus Cho or something like that, so I don't know. I'm not talking anything about the movie, Chuck, just to be clear. I wouldn't want to spoil anything about the movie. I'm only talking about the comic book. That's what I'm doing tonight. Hey, it's Ben's Brick Designs. Ben is an old friend. Nice to have you here. And he has a really fun YouTube channel if you're into Lego. I just want to do that. You know what? If I needed jokes, I'd hire some of the other people in this chat room, not you, David Davenger. So I don't know which version of the Hulk this is, but it's an interesting team. Namor. This is Eddie Brock, who currently wears the Carnage suit. So it's basically Venom. Clea, Wolverine, Laura, X-23, Black Widow, and Bucky, the Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier sounds so much cooler than Bucky. Don't call him Bucky. Everybody should be obligated legally to call him nothing but Winter Soldier. Even if he's just like walking into Starbucks for a coffee, they'd be like, Winter Soldier, got your chai latte? Winston gave you a shout out on the show last week. Really love the design work you're doing on Out of Alcatraz. Cho is Braun now. Well, I said Hulk. I don't know if that's Braun or if that's Hulk. I don't know. Well, he was only Captain America for like a week, all things considered. The White Wolf. Yeah, you could call him that for the MCU. I say only call him Winter Soldier. So again, this is Marvel renaming their Thunderbolts comic New Avengers, but I'm only talking about the comic. I'm not talking about the movies at all. The news that I'm talking about is only related to the comics. So that's just something I'm putting out there for you. I'm only talking about the New Avengers comic book. Oh, what's this? This is the Killuminati. Bolt, Mr. Ouroboros, Guru Strange, Professor Extinction, Luke Charles, Iron Apex, one more to be decided. Did you know that Marvel could publish X-Files comics? I guess logically I would have known that, but it didn't occur to me before this week. Jonathan Hickman was on the Off Panel podcast. And that was a good interview because Hickman revealed quite a bunch of cool stuff in it. It was a good interview because of that. Listen to this. So Jonathan Hickman was talking about his Avengers versus Aliens comic right now. That's like a crossover between the Fox movie Aliens and the Avengers / it's really Marvel, but Avengers versus Aliens sounds cooler, and it makes you make the Wayland Yutani logo, and it that looks better than like A versus M or something. Look, A versus A looks like the Weyland Yutani logo. I'm being really nerdy. But just to be clear, I'm only talking about the comics. I'm not talking about the movie. I'm not talking about the X-Files movies. I'm only talking about the comics. All right. Here's a quote from Jonathan Hickman. We are doing a deal with the Fox Film Studio side. And so they were going to be able to do Predator books, Aliens books. They're going to be able to do X-Files books. I'm a big X-Files nerd, so this was just an excuse for me to mention something small about X-Files. Yeah, supposedly Ryan Coogler is... I thought it was an X-Files TV series, not that he would produce, not a movie. I heard that it was a TV series. Anyway, Marvel has been releasing books that came from their acquisition of 20th Century Fox. That's included new books for Planet of the Apes, Alien, Predator. Alien and Predator, they've also done crossovers with Marvel's superheroes to hit and miss extent. But it's fun to do the crossovers. I think it's fun. Could they do the same with X-Files? Dude, I would love the premise of X-Files in the Marvel Universe, even if it was sort of an imaginary story. X-Files had ultimately 11 seasons, 5 of them quite good. 2 films, 1 of them fairly good. And it followed FBI agents investigating supernatural cases. They previously had comics at Topps. That's where Charlie Adler, Walking Dead's Charlie Adler, got his start. IDW had them. So if you ever watch my Transformers crossover episode on Comic Tropes, you'll see the Transformers meet characters from the X-Files, which... And DC Wildstorm briefly had the X-Files as well. That's true. Marvel could, in theory, publish X-Files Simpsons crossovers if they wanted to. For X-Files, Hickman is not involved. He's just saying Marvel is looking at it, basically, is what he implied. I don't know. Was there some manga based on X-Files? If so, I don't know about that. That would be new. That would be new. Huh. Interesting idea. I will say this. The original run of 9 seasons, even once Mulder left, I think that there were still good episodes. What was different is in those first 5 years, there was more or less a plan. Okay. And they were all good episodes. And then if there was a alien conspiracy episode, those were the extra fun ones. Eventually that alien conspiracy, they didn't know where they were going and it lost its legs. It stopped making much sense. But then even until the end, those Monster of the Week episodes became the really fun ones. So I still think that like there's some great episodes all the way to the end, personally. The reboot, or not reboot, but like they brought it back, and a little too much about Mulder and Scully and their kid, and like that wasn't why we were watching. Anyway, yeah, the final season was god awful. Don't watch it. Also from Hickman, he revealed that the Ultimate Universe that's going on right now and is doing very well was actually meant for a different writer. It was being developed by a different writer. So also on the off-panel podcast, Hickman confirmed that he was not the original choice to write Ultimate Spider-Man. It would have been Chip Zdarsky at one point, but there's more. That had long been rumored. We'd heard Chip Zdarsky was a choice to write Spider-Man. The big reveal in the interview was that Hickman said that Donny Cates had been developing this new Ultimate Universe idea for 3 years, and he was going to be writing it. And then he, of course, had his car accident, and he had to step away from comics for a while. Marvel asked Jonathan Hickman to continue to develop the idea. Hickman sort of took it his own direction. Bleeding Cool was reporting on this podcast, and they reported that the original idea, which I haven't heard from the creators, but the original idea was to have the Ultimate Spider-Man book be the core book, and basically as he encountered other heroes, they would potentially spin off into other Ultimate books, which is a little closer to what the original Ultimate universe did. But yeah, it would have been interesting. It would have been interesting. You know, Donnie was riding high off of Venom at the time. I really like that. Just a what could have been. So anyway, my ultimate recommendation, listen to that off-panel podcast with Jonathan Hickman. It's pretty interesting. Oh, if you do look at the credits of Ultimate Invasion, that was the first book that kicked off everything. There is a credit for Donny Cates in there that helps make all this make sense. He received a special thanks, and it was because he was the guy that got the ball rolling. Jeff Loeb is going to write an Age of Apocalypse sequel. But just to be clear, I'm talking about the comics. I'm not talking about the cartoon or the X-Men movies. I'm only talking about the comics. Doesn't really make as much sense as the new Avengers joke, but I just had fun saying that. Because back here, I'm only talking about the comics. I'm not talking about the movie. All right. So, Age of Apocalypse. 1995. One introduced the Age of Apocalypse. That had versions of all the X-Men characters being called the X-Men now because they were honoring Professor X, who had died. Okay, so the world had become very dark. And now the X-Men were led by Magneto and Rogue, also known as Magneto and Rogue. That's definitely morphed, just to be clear. And so, yeah, they were leading a rebellion against Apocalypse. Even like Sabretooth and Wildchild were on the team. Gambit had his own team, and everybody had their own team. For the 30th anniversary, oh my God, I can't believe it's the 30th year since Age of Apocalypse. That's so long. So many people have started reading comics in between that time. But for the 30th anniversary of this pretty popular alternate universe story, Marvel is going to return to Age of Apocalypse in X-Men of Apocalypse. And that's a new event series written by Loeb. It's got art by Simone DeMeo. The story is going to start in Giant Size Age of Apocalypse #1. That's a one-shot in June. Then they've got X-Men of Apocalypse Alpha one-shot in September. 4 issues X-Men of Apocalypse starting in November. And then it ends with X-Men of Apocalypse Omega. Got it. So, several issues. The story is going to kick off with Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, defeating Legion, but somehow defeating him sends both of them into the alternate Age of Apocalypse universe with hours before it ends, because that universe ended. That's not a bad ticking clock. I don't totally hate it, because that would give us something new. But I'm biased because I also do really like Ms. Marvel. I think she's interesting. So I'm okay with this personally. Oh yeah, I am not really enjoying Hush 2 either. So like, I'm not saying I'm necessarily excited for this. I'm just saying I'm totally okay with the idea of Kamala Khan being a big part of it. Yeah, he's freelance. I'm interested in the premise, and I like the artist. As long as, I don't know. Hush 2 does make me a little nervous. Yeah, just to be clear though, I'm only talking about the comics, not the X-Men show. I'm talking about the comics, just to be clear. Erwin Papa, nice to have you in the house. Last Halloween isn't too bad, actually. I wouldn't say I love it, though. I did drop it. Um, I think it really needed one artist just for some more consistency, but I didn't dislike that per se. I just wasn't super into it. Let's see what else we have. A few more pieces of news. Transformers set a Kickstarter record. Of course it did. People like Transformers. Last year, Skybound set the record for the most funded Kickstarter, and I would like to make the distinction. The most funded, the most money raised, not the most supporters. That, I think, still belongs to a Neil Gaiman book, if I'm remembering right. But it's still the most funded comics Kickstarter campaign. So Skybound had set that record last year with their G.I. Joe compendiums. They collected all the Marvel issues of G.I. Joe, and they raised over $3.7 million for that campaign. Well, a year later, they have now broken their own record. Oh, I'm glad you're reading it. I love Radiant Black. I definitely recommend it to everybody. So, the Transformers Compendium set just finished this past week. Over $4.6 million pledged. $4.6 million for comics that have technically already been out. It's popular. In addition to reprinting all of the Marvel and Marvel UK Transformers issues, including, by the way, the Marvel issue, well, it was the Marvel run, but the issue with Spider-Man as a guest star, they got the rights, they're reprinting that. The campaign included signatures and art for, like, reward tiers. They got original creators, including Simon Furman, Bob Budiansky, Andrew Wildman, Jeff Sr. They got new box art by Daniel Warren Johnson. And they added some interesting stretch goals. I do want to give them credit for this. Reprints of individual issues, like issue 5 has a famous Shockwave cover where, like, it has the Transformers logo at the top, and then it says "Are All Dead," like he's just shot that into the wall, and it looks really good. That was by Mark Bright. And then issue 67 had Galvatron by Jim Lee. That was, like, I remember at the time I was like, whoa, this is clearly Jim Lee art. I didn't expect to see him do anything Transformers. I guess he just felt like it. So those are good ideas. No, at least not yet. First, look, with how successful this has been, they could very well go over to IDW next. Now, it gets a little more unwieldy when you start reprinting IDW's Transformers era, because they had lots of spin-offs and lots of different continuities and lots of different crossovers, whereas the Marvel and Marvel UK run is just like one continuity. It's just one continuity. Did issue 53 of Jim Lee art? I don't know if they offered that as a reward. I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah, MD Bright was great. If you guys don't know, Mark Bright was the artist on G.I. Joe for quite a while. He was the artist of Green Lantern for the Emerald Dawn story. He was one of the founders at Milestone Comics. He drew Icon, if I'm remembering right. Really, really good artist. Really, really good artist. Yeah, I miss him too. The UK issues are really fun. And see, they published a weekly Transformers comic, which would reprint the US issues. But eventually they were getting caught up and they needed to fill more pages before the next US issue came out. So they would write additional stories with other characters that weren't being used in the main story, and they would fit them in between. So, like, you could get this compendium in two ways. You could either get all of the US issues and all of the UK issues, or you could get one. It was called Till All Are One, and it just puts them all in chronological order. Kind of nice idea. Anyway, congrats to all of them. It was really fun. I've read a bunch of the UK series, and I feel like they were actually having more fun with the whole thing than the US it was. I know what you mean. There's some dark stuff, but it's like it felt like there were stakes in the UK stuff. I don't know. It was cool. Battle Pope returns. Lucky timing for them. Yes, the first American Pope has just been elected. What do they call that when the conclave chooses a new Pope? Is it just a new Pope is elected by the cardinals? I don't know. Anyway, Pope Leo. The Battle Pope comic is coming back. Well, it's a reprint, folks. It's a reprint. For the 25th anniversary of Battle Pope, again, make me feel old. For the 25th anniversary, the self-published series, originally self-published series by Robert Kirkman and Tony Moore, yep, it's going to come out in an anniversary hardcover collection. All of Battle Pope is collected here. I love Battle Pope. It's hilarious. And the art is incredible. If you don't know the story, it's okay. It's about a hard-drinking, womanizing Pope. And he dies, and God gives him a chance at redemption by giving him superpowers. And so he's this crass, super tough guy, and he gets this dumb roommate, Jesus Christ, and they fight the forces of evil. They fight demons and stuff that are plaguing the world. It's sort of almost post-apocalyptic. They get lots of wacky supporting characters, like all the people that live in their building and stuff. It's great. Tony Moore illustrated an updated cover. So Tony came back. That marks twice since he's left Walking Dead that Tony has come back to work with Robert. He did Walking Dead 150, and now he's doing a new Battle Pope cover. So that's nice. That's nice, because these guys grew up as friends in the 7th grade. It's fun for me to see them come together on stuff like this. If you've never read Battle Pope, folks, it features the first time Robert Kirkman collaborated with a bunch of other artists that he's continued to collaborate with and have had successful careers. Matthew Roberts, he did Manifest Destiny, great book. He did a bunch of Battle Pope stuff. Corey Walker, co-creator of Invincible, among other things. EJ Sue, often here in our chat. Lovely gentleman, great artist. Co-created Tech Jacket, who was recently on the Invincible cartoon. And there's a bunch more. So it was a really cool era. Yep, Tony has done 3 of that same Battle Pope cover. It's true. He did the original. They brought it back as a colored version, and Tony redrew it, and now he's redrawn it again for a big, what do you call it? Compendium. But I will always look for an excuse to promote Battle Pope. If you guys want to see something that's totally underwhelming, the 3rd Battle Pope trade paperback, the intro, there's like a page by like some writer or artist saying like, this book is great. I was the writer of that one and I look back and I'm like, this isn't that interesting, but I was trying to be. Oh yeah, Tony Moore on Fear Agent is great. I think an underrated Tony Moore book is Exterminators, a Vertigo book. Really, really good. Moving on, one more thing of Skybound news. Battle Beast, the blind bag, you could luck out and get Spider-Man in the Skybound comic, this Image Skybound comic. So, Invincible Universe Battle Beast #1. That comes out this Wednesday. It's going to have like comic book store editions, and there's a bunch of different variant covers. They also have a blind bag, like a sealed bag, and inside you could get any of the covers, including the super rare variants. You don't know what you're going to get. There's 9 different variants you could get in the blind bag, and I think that there's 2 more that they have on newsstands beyond that. So there's like 11 different covers. But here's the thing. This week, Skybound confirmed that you could also get one of 3 other books inside this. You could get a new printing of Invincible issue 19. That was the first appearance of Battle Beast. You could get a special advance edition of issue 2 before anybody else gets it, a whole month early. Or you could get, in a official partnership with Marvel Comics, a reprint of Marvel Team Up number 14. That was the first meeting of Invincible and Spider-Man, and that was all drawn by Invincible's co-creator Cory Walker. So you could get a Marvel comic with an Image logo on it. I think that that's interesting. I'm not a huge sort of collector for gimmicks and stuff, but I do think that this sounds like a fun gimmick. You know, I'm if my store has one of these at like regular price, I might get one. Now here's the only bummer. This was supposed to be a surprise, but what happened was a bunch of like whatnot retailers spoiled the surprise like about almost a week ago now, and that artificially inflated a bunch of eBay prices on these things because there are some early versions out there, but you know, stores are buying them at regular price. So if they sell them at, you know, the regular price for the blind bag version, which is I think $10, I would consider getting one. Yeah, it's a fun gimmick. I can just see the whatnot exploitation coming. It already did. It already did. The only reason to really like engage is, well, like one, I guess you could do speculation, but I think that there's better places to invest your money for that. But if you like this team and you like some of the artists that have drawn the variant covers, which they got a killer's murderers row, I guess it's called, of artists, that could be fun. That could be fun. That's all. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I think that one is probably the one that would be the coolest, but yeah. What else? A manga author is going on a health-related hiatus. I just mention these every once in a while because it's so important to take care of your health, and this career does not lend itself easily to good health. So this week in Kodansha's weekly shonen magazine, they announced that Negi Harubo, who is the creator of Go-Go Loser Ranger, is going to take a hiatus due to health issues. They didn't get into what the specific health issues were, but it's more than just a cold because the hiatus is going to begin with this week's May 14th issue, and he's not scheduled to come back for a full month, June 11th. So that's a long time. If you don't know this book, it's kind of a funny premise. In the manga, the Dragon Rangers are adored by the public for protecting them from the Monster Army for 13 years. But the story reveals that technically the good guys, the Rangers, actually beat the Monster Army within the first year. And then they just subjugated them and forced them to keep cranking out monsters that they could easily defeat and stay popular for like the adoring public. Well, there's one monster that's not taking it, so he decides he's going to go undercover and infiltrate from the inside. So that's kind of funny. I would say that you're always allowed to take a break. The risk is if you're newer and you don't have, a huge following yet, you risk killing the momentum of your book. And they're just a very there's a culture of at least showing up, and so if you're showing up, you might as well like crank out some of the pages. It's very frowned upon to take sick time. So usually when people are taking sick time, it's because they are starting to have some health issues, like, from all the sitting and all like not moving and working really long hours. So that's usually, unfortunately, the problem. Yeah, exactly. Mango Do is pointing out two popular artists that have taken longer hiatuses, but it's usually because of health related issues. Sometimes you could be like pretty well established and your book is technically on hiatus, but it's like it might not come back, but if the author wants to, the publisher will definitely do it. Things like Hunter x Hunter, that artist has taken a massive hiatus. Or what's another one? Technically, Vagabond by Takehiko Inoue. He hasn't worked on that in many years, but technically they say it's still on hiatus. So if he wanted to come back, he's a big enough name that the publisher would definitely do it. Weekly mangaka are not usually allowed to take breaks. Naruto author Masashi Kishimoto has said that he wasn't allowed to attend his father's funeral to meet a strict deadline. It's messed up. See, you say not allowed, and it's like, you could still make that choice, right? But yes, you're right. Like, you'd probably risk getting your book canceled. It's pretty messed up. I know he is. It's just that they say Vagabond is technically on hiatus. I don't think he's coming back to it, but they never said it was canceled or anything. All right, moving forward. A former comics exec has been sentenced for embezzlement. This is just me putting on my drama hat and just being like, if I was a guy just looking for nothing but views, this would be the title, and I just spend 15 minutes just going like, what a horrible person. But it's just a dramatic story is all, but it's real. So The Hollywood Reporter wrote that movie TV producer David Ozer has been sentenced to 18 months in prison. He was convicted for fraud and embezzlement. How does it relate to comics? I'll get there. Ozer pled guilty to 2 counts of embezzling funds meant for production of 2 separate television productions. The show Safe Haven was defrauded over $200,000 that he took from a production company and did not put into the show. He used for himself. The 10 episodes that were shot for that show back in 2022 still haven't ever been shown anywhere, but they did film 10 episodes. And it's based on a comic, supposedly. Here's the cover that was shown at Stan Lee's LA Comic-Con back in 2017, but the book has never been released. So a book that's never been released, a show that's never been released, $200,000 missing. Ozer was the president of IDW from its launch back in 2013 all the way through 2018. But then he left because he wanted to produce TV and movies and stuff. He's worked on stuff like Wynonna Earp, I want to say. He worked on the original pilot for Lock and Key, although that didn't get picked up. I'm not talking about the Netflix version. There was another version that was shot before that. But it wasn't released. And then he's been working on this one, Safe Haven. But he was also taking some of the money. Why was he taking the money? Ozer claims he was blackmailed into doing it to prevent his family from seeing messages that he had on a hookup app. He has since been divorced. So, not great. Not great. No, probably not enough funds coming through comics, although who knows? I have no idea which app. I didn't even bother trying to research that. Oops. Jail time. Thundercats got delayed. We're almost done with the news, but I wanted to mention this, and it's going to tie into the next piece of news. Thundercats issue 16, Declan Shalvey, Drew Moss. They've been very consistent, creating a very popular comic, fun comic. It's been moved from its original May release window to June. It's been pushed back a month, which also will mean that it's going to come out only 2 weeks before issue 17 is scheduled to hit. This is just me speculating. I don't know why it was delayed, but I'm going to guess that it's Diamond, because Diamond still distributes Dynamite's books. I just wonder. The current story, if you're not reading it, Chitara has had to step up and take leadership of the team while Lion-O is missing. So, yeah, there's been all sorts of cool developments. Tigra has developed these special metal suits for them, and I don't know what else. Like that original character Calico from issue 2, she's back. It's a good book. But speaking of Diamond, let me go with this. Still a little bit of news for them. A little bit. Here. One of the more valuable assets for Diamond is that they've had, because they've been working for so long, this list of contacts. Like basically at this point, it's pretty much every comic book store or retailer that orders comics in America, right? In North America, probably. It's got their names, their addresses, the contact information. A lot of people would love that info. Info is valuable. That's why they track us on our phones and websites and stuff like that. Well, so that's some valuable information that they have. As part of the current legal proceedings, that list is now part of the public record because it's in a filing. The entire list. So, if there are any indie publishers out there that want to reach out to some stores to see, like, hey, do you want to carry my book? You can literally get that information right now. Let me just add, please don't harass anyone. Please, please, please. But this is out there. There's the website. It's like 433 pages of an Excel document, really small, just maybe thousands of stores. It doesn't have numbering on it, but probably, yeah. Because if there's like over 400 pages and there's like tons of names, yeah, it's thousands of comic book stores, names, addresses, and emails. It was so that information is out there. There's the link if you are somebody that needs to reach out to a comic book store and promote it. Very valuable information. Oh, congratulations, Beowulf. I'm happy for you. All right, let me set up my camera so that we can take a look at the small handful of exceptional comics that came out this week. It was a really good week for comics. I didn't get too many things. I think I bought like 5 comics. I consider that small in my world. Probably most people would be like, 5 is healthy. And I would basically agree. I wish I could keep it to 5 every month or every week. I mean, I'm just setting up my camera, so bear with me a moment as I focus everything. And move things around a tiny bit. Present extra camera. I'll use this one. We'll move things around slightly. You don't need to see my pens or my masturbating Conan. I mean, let's call it what it is. We'll take a look at what I got. And then I'm curious to see what other people got. But let me start with mine, because I'm the host. And just to be clear, I'm only talking about the comics here. I'm not talking about the film adaptations or TV shows. I'm only talking about the comics. I'll just start with Blood and Thunder. Let me preface my thoughts on this comic with a disclaimer, okay? I definitely consider Benito Cereno, E.J. Sue, Robert Kirkman, at the very least, colleagues, and honestly, I think of them as friends. I think that they're great people. I've talked to them for like over 25 years. We've hung out. Yeah, so there's a lot of history there. And I just sort of want to put that out there so, just when I give my review, it's going to be a glowing review for this. And you can factor that in. I'm just trying to be upfront there, okay? I'm just trying to be upfront. But this is very good. why is it good, and what is it? Blood and Thunder is a sci-fi book in the future about there are people from Earth, but there are also aliens, and specifically we follow a humanoid-looking alien called Bloodso, who's a bounty hunter. She has an outdated weapon here that can fire all sorts of different projectiles and stuff, and it also has an AI. It's sentient, and it's called Thunder. So Blood is a bounty hunter that collects dangerous aliens, the world's most dangerous criminals. Why do I like it? Several reasons. First of all, amazing world building in this right off the bat. Like, you're like, oh wow, like it all makes sense how things work. And like the police, I wouldn't go so far as to necessarily call them fascist or anything outrightly evil. They're not, but they're also not the best. They're not all morally, clear, which I guess you could argue is kind of like real life. So even though Bloodso is a bounty hunter, which you sort of think of as like, maybe a sleazy type of a job, she's definitely a morally centered person. She has a code. So I like the world building. I like the characters. The art, come on, the art is incredible. The designs for these aliens are just amazing. Like with the eyeballs on the bottom of this, like sort of this head with the one I like is this prostitute that has like 3 mouths. So she's like smoking out of like the side of her mouth sometimes in the front. It's just incredible design, great storytelling, plenty of detailed rendering. It looks good. And every once in a while, it's quite funny. But if you've read anything by Benito Cereno, you would know that. The guy's written books like The Tick, his supernatural detective Hector Plasm, a team-up buddy book between Albert Edison. Was that his name? Thomas Edison and Thomas Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt and Edison traveling through time. Tales of a Bully Pulpit. Tales from the Bully Pulpit. Very funny. Familiar and new at the same time. I think I can understand that. Yeah. It's a blast. It's got action. It's got drama. It's got great character design. It's got all sorts of cool sci-fi elements for, like, the weapons, the travel. Some things are a little retro, like, the car design and the building design. You've got like some Art Deco 60s type influences in there. And then you've got things that are just like grungier and not awesome. There's this police sergeant, I want to say, and he knew Bloodso's father, and he's like trying to recruit her to join the police force. He's got a very distinctive scar here that just helps give him a little personality. Other than that, when I look at him, I definitely think a little bit of Stanley from The Office. I don't know if that's an intentional reference point for the character, but that's the sort of vibe he gives me. I like Bloodso and her weird relationship with Thunder, who has morals. He won't like shoot certain things that could like kill. So he's like, nope, choose something else. She's like, I'm in danger. He's like, no, you got to choose something else. So, Benito Cereno is the writer. E.J. Sue's the artist. I don't know the colorist, Masasic. I don't know Masasic. And then Robert sort of helped co-create the idea and a Purdue editorial type role. Speaking of Robert Kirkman, remember Die, Die, Die? Will that book ever come back? I don't know. The only way to know is to talk to him. I would say that in the short term, he's very busy with a wide variety of books through Skybound. So I'm not sure that it's likely anytime soon. a descendant of Drew Bledsoe, but she's alien. Oh, I know. I agree. EJ is incredible. If you want an entertaining artist's social media, follow EJ, because he draws some of the stuff that we like, action heroes and sexy ladies and stuff, but he also draws interesting technology, and sometimes he just draws cute dogs, different looking cute dogs and pretty girls and stuff like that, but not like in an exploitive way. I'm just saying, like, to try to get different types of faces and body types and different types of fur on animals, different body shapes for dogs. He likes, and sometimes he'll even include if he draws digitally, like a sped up version showing how he works and revises. It's really entertaining. Anyway, do I recommend it? Absolutely. I think Blood and Thunder is a fantastic first issue. It ends on a good cliffhanger, indicating sort of where the story could go, at least for a first arc. Really interesting world building. Somebody just said familiar but new, and that's a good way of doing it. Because it takes ideas that we've seen and it subverts our expectations a lot of the time. That's what it does. So that's fun. That's very fun. Strongly recommended. Here was a great emotional comic this week. This is the final issue of Grommets, and this is like a slice of life real comic, drawn a little cartoony, but honestly, not silly. It has humor based on how people interact. It's very real in that regard. It's co-written by Rick Remender and Brian Posehn, two real life friends that did not know each other as young teenagers, but this book presupposes that they did, and they were both sort of like skaters and a bit of stoners and stuff, and with troubled family issues. And it takes from some of that real life and just has them meet and become friends. The final issue is Rick is being forced by his family to move away after he's made some really good friends. And meanwhile, these skaters are all being hassled by the police because the police are protecting the local football high schooler team who beat the skaters up, and they're like, "Oh, well, you guys started it. You're the slackers." It's heartbreaking in some ways. It's so, oh man! But look at this art too, because I don't know how much I shouted out Brett Parson. Is it Parson or Parsons? It's Parson. I got it right the first time. Brett Parson draws in a style that really reminds me of some of the EC comics artists like Jack Davis, but like Jack Davis drawing slightly more realistic stories, not his Mad Magazine goofy stuff, minus the occasional imaginary sequence. Oh, it's just so good though. It's set in the 80s. It feels authentic in terms of how people dress, how their hair looks, how they treat each other. For me, being old enough, like being similar age to Rick and Brian, I look at this and I go, wow, there's just so much here that feels authentic and nostalgic in like the most emotional ways, not just like a fun way, just like, oh yeah, that was how we dressed then. That was how houses looked then in terms of furniture. That, like, there's an attention to detail with things like that. This is how people dressed. This is how people had their hair. This is how stores looked and what they carried. There's lots of little bits of detail like that feels very authentic. It is funny in parts. I'm not trying to say that it is a bummer or anything like that. I'm just saying that it is emotional, which makes sense because it's the final issue and it's sort of closing up a chapter in somebody's life by having them, have to a kid having to move. It's out of his control. He has to move. It's really cool. I so strongly recommend this, folks. Grommets was something special. Grommets is like sort of what reminds me, like, oh my God, I often love Rick Remender's stuff. And Brian Posehn has written a lot of great comics too. I really liked his run with Jerry Duggan and Tony Moore, to bring him back, on Deadpool. That was quite good. So, is a trade paperback out yet? Issue 7 just came out this week, so not yet. Give it a couple months at least. It would be a very satisfying read in full. Very, very cool. Boy, did I love this. I don't have a lot that I can say review-wise for Black Canary Best of the Best, but I do recommend it, folks. This was a 6-issue limited series that used a framing device of being set at a, what would you call it? An MMA match, like an Ultimate Fighting Championship type of pay-per-view event between Black Canary and Lady Shiva, two of the best martial artists or hand-to-hand combatants in DC Comics. Lady Shiva is generally acknowledged as the best overall hand-to-hand fighter. Yes, better than Batman. Without being superpowered, you know, because otherwise you could say like, well, Deathstroke, and you're like, yeah, okay, but Deathstroke's superpowered, you know, as far as hand-to-hand fighting. But that's just the framework, okay? So we've gone through like several rounds, and we're in like the 6th round. There's one round for each issue, but you also get flashbacks explaining why Black Canary is doing this, and how she may honestly want to throw the fight for some money. There's also, on top of that, a personal connection, because her mother, the original Black Canary, who trained her in large part, is also dying from cancer. So this really frames Black Canary as somebody outside of being just a teammate on Justice League of America or Birds of Prey. You know, she's her own person for this run. She's got her relationship with Oliver Queen, but it's really not about that. And he's not a big part of this. It's about her relationship with her mother, and it's about her relationship with herself, and how far she's willing to go in this fight, you know, and will she throw the fight for money that she needs for a certain reason? Will she, could she even overcome Lady Shiva? It's very cool. It's a believable fight. The only real sort of stretch that makes it a superhero comic are like sort of two things. One, the announcers are very witty and very verbose, you know, describing pretty much every punch in a way that some punches get described in a fight, or some submissions get to, but to have it like rattle off like she did this move, then this move, then this move, they wouldn't have time to say as much as they do. That's fine though, because it keeps it moving. It's not too much. It doesn't clutter up the panels. And the other superhero-y thing about it is just how much abuse each of these people take. You know, they really get beat to hell. Like here, Lady Shiva smashes a stool on Black Canary and then clubs her with it, because this is a match where you can only win by having the other person say, I submit. It's cool. The art is great, but anybody who's ever seen anything by Ryan Sook knows that. Ryan Sook is really, really talented. Really talented. If you ever want to see something kind of cool that Ryan Sook did, I believe, and my memory could be off here, but I believe he did the designs for a Buffy the Vampire Slayer animated show, which they made a very short pilot for. And it had all the actors from the live action show doing their voices, with the exception of Sarah Michelle Gellar. But I think that they got the same voice actress that duped her in the video games. It was cool. Yeah, it was a great finale. Oh, interesting. I thought Black Canary was a bit disappointing. Cool premise and killer art, but it got really repetitive. Fair criticism, because I mean, it's sort of held within the constraints of it's a fight comic that's taking place as a pay-per-view. So it has rounds, and you're really following every punch. It's not a montage. It's like you're following every move for like, 2-3 minute rounds or something throughout the comic. Is it repetitive? I guess I could see that. I didn't get that, but then again, I guess I have to admit that I really like MMA and boxing. So maybe I'm a little more biased than the average person. That's an interesting blind spot that I wasn't even thinking I could have without somebody pushing back in that regard. I liked it. That's all I'll say. I didn't feel like I had a lot to add without breaking down what it is in explicit detail. I found it emotionally satisfying, and I found the fight choreography very, very good. Very, very good. An interesting artistic challenge. I guess I kept putting myself in the shoes of Ryan Sook as well as reading the story and going like, how would I have approached this sequence? How would I have approached it? Like this, because this is a really impressive way to do it. I couldn't help but think about it. The other two issues I got this week were the latest G.I. Joe, although I sort of feel like, can I sell somebody on G.I. Joe when it's in issue 316? Like, that's a lot of G.I. Joe, right? But let me try. Let me try this week instead of just saying, like, I like it, blah, blah, blah. G.I. Joe is still worth getting into because, first of all, most of the issues will either be one and done, sort of like parts of a mission, or if it starts an arc, it usually will sort of number itself. But you can always catch up with what's going on, okay? And I think Larry Hama just sort of was raised in that Silver Age mentality of any comic could be somebody's first. So we're going to have the characters say each other's names or say like what their goal is. And maybe that's not necessarily completely realistic, but it helps for a story to read very smoothly. And they keep coming up with slightly new ideas. It's Larry Hama. Larry Hama has written the whole thing. In this, I've never seen this before. Some Cobra soldiers, not sort of their named leadership and stuff like that, but some of their soldiers want to defect and give information on Cobra. Within the continuity of the comics, there are some bad guys called Crimson Guardsmen. And they are so fanatical that they will like have plastic surgery to all sort of look alike. Actually, there's like a few series of them, so they could like all be Fred's, the Fred series, the Steven series. And that's so that they can take over each other's lives or duties when needed. What they do is they and their families embed themselves in America as like businessmen and other key jobs that keep America running. And then they do have like a soldier uniform and are trained as infantrymen. But it's basically like whole families that operate as cells throughout the country. And that's always been a part of the comic. But this is interesting. This time, like this guy has like a father who's an invalid. He's become like, you know, old and needs help. And he's got an adopted daughter. And it's just made them a little bit more sensitive to other people. And they drive onto G.I. Joe base and ask to defect. That's an interesting idea. And so with this new information, they can take that in some interesting directions. Meanwhile, the two key bad guys in the comic are always Destro and Cobra Commander. And recently, Cobra Commander had some of his soldiers shoot Baroness. She survived, but Destro and Baroness are an item. And they're trying to like see if they can still work as like business partners. It's very tense because they're very different people. Destro has a code of honor and Cobra Commander is like a weasel, but Cobra Commander can get things done. It's very interesting seeing their relationship move forward. And you get some, a couple different missions that Joes are going on. They've got like a ninja team who are going to take over the identities of the Crimson Guardsman family and try to infiltrate Cobra society, not Cobra like leadership or command or fight as a war. They're going to go undercover as this family. And then meanwhile, there's also some G.I. Joes that just got back from a mission, right? They're exhausted and they're like really looking forward to coming home, getting some rest and relaxation, having some downtime. but they have to get sent right back to the same place they just escaped from, because they're the only ones that have a certain amount of intelligence on the situation, and things have changed fast. So they have to like have just enough time to like basically shower and go to the bathroom, and they have to go right back out. And that makes you go like, oh yeah, I guess sometimes, military job could be tough like that. The only sort of comic book-esque aspect to G.I. Joe that makes it seem like they're almost super heroic is that they've got a camaraderie. They work together very well. These are the best of the best. And in real life, what job or something doesn't have at least a few people that have personality clashes? That just doesn't really happen in G.I. Joe. But there is real stuff because they get supporting characters. Characters live and die. Like they really do kill off some of the good guys and the bad guys. And you really can jump in at any point because it's an ongoing battle. It's an ongoing thing. And sometimes G.I. Joe doesn't go up against Cobra. I'll put that out there. Sometimes they have to go up against dictators in other countries and do like slightly more grounded, realistic stuff with different types of terrorists. But Cobra's an interesting ongoing threat. It is. I love it. I love this book. The Ninja Team is a great use of taxpayer money. They save so much on ammunition. Have they ever had an issue where it explores the taxpayer's reaction to finding out the money is going to ninjas and a guy named Backblast? No, not quite. But they do talk about some stuff like that in ways that make it feel real. First of all, G.I. Joe is not like famous or well known like in the cartoon. They definitely they work off of like black sites or several different army bases, and the general public doesn't really know about G.I. Joe. They're more almost sometimes like spies in some ways, but they're all military. And they do talk about, they have had stories where people in the Pentagon that like allocate the funds for G.I. Joe, sometimes there've been people in there that have been corrupt or something like that and have tried to mess with G.I. Joe. That's been interesting. Like there have been times where G.I. Joe almost gets shut down. It is kind of crazy if you pause to think like, wait, they've got like all sorts of special tanks and jets and their own aircraft carrier and their own space shuttle. Yeah, it gets a little bonkers. It doesn't really bother all the time trying to justify too much of that. But Larry Hama also will not include some of the toys and characters if he thinks that they're too science fiction-y. He famously didn't use Crystal Ball the hypnotist until like years after the toy line ended. And all of a sudden he was like, oh, actually, I've got a good idea for it. He's like more like a palm reader that works out of, like a tarot card shop in a strip mall, but he's good at reading people. And so that's why he's a good interrogator. And so like he had a story where he was like, okay, I will use him, but he doesn't use like the Cobra Law and sci-fi stuff. That happens in a different continuity, the Energon universe continuity. They go a little more sci-fi, but just the G.I. Joe, every once in a while, a little sci-fi, but it's a little more grounded. I love it. I love it. So it's just, constantly going on different adventures, but like the situation is constantly changing too. Like right now, Dr. Mindbender is getting cured of the zombie virus by an organization called Revanche, which is nothing but AI robots who have become aware and also operate as terrorists. They're very hard to track down. So crazy stuff can happen. The last book I'll talk about that I read this week was The Moon is Following Us, issue 9. I don't know whether this is going to be an ongoing with another arc, but I get the sense that it's sort of like a year-long story and that we're at the very least coming to the end of an arc, maybe the end of a story. I think we have all the players on the field that are important right now. And it's, I think what we've learned over time is that it is primarily Sam's story, who is a mother and a wife, and she and her husband are just trying to save their daughter from a dream world that she exists in, from supernatural enemies. But it's mostly about her. Look at this. Daniel Warren Johnson, perhaps famous for including the occasional pro wrestling move as part of fight choreography. It looks really cool when you don't expect Beta Ray Bill to do a pile driver on a demon. You don't expect Optimus Prime to give sort of a lariat to a Decepticon. You don't expect it as much, but you have to use it sparingly. You have to use it sparingly. But he has written one in, and now it's Riley Rossmo as the artist who's executing it. It's interesting seeing Sam take this bad guy and give a belly to back overhead suplex. It's a very complex thing to illustrate. A body sort of bending like this and still feeling plausible, realistic, and having some energy. Seeing like, okay, the feet are jumping up and we're twisting and pushing down. That's a lot to represent as an artist. I'm really impressed with how Riley did that and gave a lot of real estate to it. It's really nice. With one little insert here showing how she grabbed the guy, and that's enough to explain exactly what's happening here and make it clear. Oh, that's true. Speaking of pro wrestling, Sabu was definitely an innovator and worked a lot of more indie stuff, but Sabu was really entertaining. Oh, how dare you, sir. Let us not speak of... let's not get too real with the AI stuff. Bronze Age Nerd is also a big fan of G.I. Joe, and he has a really fun channel. He does sort of a news or topic of the week type show with community art and all sorts of fun segments like that, the occasional interview. And he also does it Monday night. His starts at 8 p.m. Pacific, so a little less than an hour. Bronze Age Nerd and his co-host Bigby will be going live. What? That's a German suplex, right. Sorry. German suplex. I wasn't thinking of the exact word. Moon is following us do a powerbomb crossover. I guess you could make that work. Yeah, you could make that work. That's interesting. Tonight we're doing an X-Men fantasy draft with a guest. That sounds fun. Drafts are fun. So the art is fantastic here, folks. And we're just building up to some... There's a lot of action in this issue, and that's fun. There's a lot of confrontations based on conflicts that have been established over, the previous 8 issues. It's very satisfying, and yet there's also an emotional payoff. I just want to say I really like this part of a scene where Sam and her daughter are on like this unicorn, because again, they're in a dream world, and they're just told that if they fly up, they can get back, they can get out of the dream world, get back to real world. And look at that. That's a great splash page with a fantastic use of negative space. If you turn it, you go, oh, okay, this is the real world bridge that we've seen them use before in their town. Okay. They go on walks here in their town. And it just sort of fades into essentially this dream world where they're flying above the clouds now, and they're coming to this. But it's at different perspectives too. I like that they don't just they don't come up this way. They come up this way. Beautiful, beautiful image. And it's so nice that they gave us this moment where they're almost there. They're so close. And then something happens. Stuff gets a little bad. They're still in the dream world, because when they're in the real world, Daniel Warren Johnson draws. So they're sort of like right on the edge. They're about to enter, and some crazy stuff happens. Great tension and great art. That was what I was most impressed with this issue. All due respect to Daniel Warren Johnson for his writing, but like Riley Rossmo really delivered some fantastic action scenes, and I just was really enchanted with a couple of these splash pages. That's a good one too, but this one really captured my imagination. That idea of like flying above the clouds, and then all of a sudden, as you get through the clouds, you sort of see the real world start to emerge, but it's like at a different angle than your current reality. Just fascinating idea. I really like that. Felt innovative. Felt cool. So that means that I need to decide what is the book of the week. What is my pick for book of the week out of the 5 issues that I read this week? Well, first of all, I actually recommend all of them. None of these are things that I'm like, I'm going to cut that. I'm done. But these all just sort of feel like chapters and not, sorry, honking going on outside. Chapters, very, very good. Just not quite something that I'm going to put as a book of the week. Because for me, it came down emotionally more to these two. First issue of Blood and Thunder, last issue of Grommets. Well, it's not necessarily fair to compare them. They're wildly different genres. This one has a lot more legwork to do. The first issue has to set up your characters, your premise, kind of hook you with the ideas of it. Whereas a final issue is giving you all the emotional payoff that you've sort of, it's paying off your investment. This is where you can drop the ball and make something unsatisfying, and maybe retroactively you're not satisfied with that story. But in this case, that's not the case. That's a really eloquent way of phrasing things. So proud of myself. I think I'm going to, and it's not easy for me to say this, but I'm going to give Grommets issue 7 my pick for book of the week, because it was top to bottom fantastic, and it functions in 2 ways. First, you can read this as a single issue. It's a complete story, and it's satisfying. But when you factor in the previous 6 issues, it gives it even more emotional resonance. Now, I really strongly recommend Blood and Thunder, because I'm just as biased. Like, I know Rick Remender very well too, so I'm biased there. Like, I'm biased on both. Okay, Blood and Thunder is a blast, and the only reason I'm not picking it is because it has to set more up right now. This is a little bit more of sort of the exposition phase of a scene in a movie, right? That's never going to be well, I shouldn't say never. It's rarely the most satisfying element. There's a lot of action and funny stuff within this. So it's not just wall-to-wall text. That's not what I'm saying. I'm only saying when you compare the two, this gets to pay things off and have the sort of fun that you've built to. This one has to hook you. And it did hook me. So I definitely strongly recommend it. I'm just saying that my overall pick for book of the week is going to be Grommets issue 7. But I am glad that I get to continue reading this. I also would not ever be against a second miniseries of Grommets coming out. I would not be against that. I think that there's more to tell in that world. Not easy, especially like the fewer books I get in a week. It feels like it's tougher to choose which one did I like the most. Oh, thank you so much for that, like for picking it up. I'm glad that my recommendation carried some weight. I wanted to get Ultimate Wolverine. It was sold out, so I didn't get to pick that up. Oh, well. Yeah, exactly. It might be book of the week next month. It might be book of the week when it finishes its current arc. It all depends on what else comes out. It's very, very good. Tom Grommets. It's a great week when the choice is tough to make. And there have been some weeks where it's very hard to choose. I will say that last week, there were some great issues, but it was kind of easy to say, like, no, Ginseng Roots was something special, and like that was a kind of easier pick of the week for me. Even though I really enjoyed stuff like Feral, Ultimate Spider-Man, and the Energon Universe special. Really enjoyed all those. It was a little easier, but that was a tough one. That was a tough one to pick. All I can say is hopefully you see that it's still a recommendation and that carries some weight. I read the first Adventure Man series and I loved the art. A big fan of the Dodsons. They work well together. The story and the characters I liked, but it didn't feel new enough to me. I wasn't completely hooked. And I know it's supposed to be sort of retro, so that's fair. I think I missed Ginseng Roots. We'll have to look for it. It's quite good. Yeah. Big book. Roots was my top comic when it came out. Nice. Big week for me Wednesday comic-wise. Yeah, let me take a quick look at a list of what's coming out in 2 days from when I'm showing this. I was about to say recording this, but I ain't recording. I'm just pulling up a list of the comics for the week. Yeah, it does. Okay, so Battle Beast. I'll definitely be getting that. What else do they have? They have Supergirl. I don't need that. Godzilla, X-Men. I'll give it a shot. It could be fun. I liked Godzilla Hulk, and I really like... no, Godzilla Hulk was probably my favorite so far, but Godzilla Fantastic Four was interesting. Godzilla Spider-Man let me down a little, but Godzilla X-Men I'll try. Oh, we've got the first issue of Spider-Verse versus Venomverse. While I'm sort of burned out on multiverse stories, I will say Kyle Higgins is one of the writers on that, and the artists and writers carry a lot of weight with me these days. I trust certain people, so I will potentially give that a shot. There's Godzilla. Here There Be Aliens. I don't know what that is. Exquisite Corpses. I read the ash can of that. Exquisite Corpses is another James Tynion book, but it's a cool one. I'll definitely be picking that up, and I'll talk about that next week. A book called Dark Regards. Looks like some sort of indie, like supernatural heavy metal book. Dark Gwenpool. You know what? Like, I do not expect that to be good, but I may pick it up because that's what I expect. That could potentially be material to talk about on the show if it's... Oh, Huck is coming back. That's Huck is good. Huck is by Mark Miller, but it's actually one of the more positive things that he writes. The Energon Universe Free Comic Book Day special comes out as a for sale issue. I do recommend that. Money Shot comes back. That's funny, but I won't get it. Toxic Avenger pinup special. I won't get that. Absolute Batman. I'm curious to see where they go with the new Mr. Freeze. I'll get Absolute Batman. New issue of Action Comics. New issue of Aquaman. Batman Dark Patterns. I gotta start from the beginning on that one. Batman and Robin. Haven't been reading that. An Image book called Black Ritual. I think that's a Spawn book. I don't know. I'm not getting that. Daredevil. Vampires. What's this? Vampires World War V. It's like a DC vampire book. Doctor Strange of Asgard. Fire and Ice are coming back again. Okay. Geiger. Newish. I'm not reading Geiger. It's probably good, but I don't know. Green Lantern Corps. Helverine. Ice Cream Man. I like reading Ice Cream Man in trade paperback format. The Fashion School Serial Killer. It's an Image book. I don't know. King Spawn, Miles Morales, Spider-Man. A new issue of One World Under Doom. I'm curious where that goes. I am very curious to see how they show that Doom is a villain, actually. I need that to happen. I just have a couple comic book stores that I follow on social media, and one of them tends to post everything that they ordered, which usually is everything as images. So I'm just like scrolling through that right now. It might not be comprehensive, but it's pretty close. Book called Pastime by Mad Cave. I don't know. Phantom Road by Image. I don't know that one either. Phoenix. Red Hulk. Red Sonja versus Army of Darkness. I didn't know about that one. Silverhawks is up to issue 4. Space Ghost issue 12. Well, we talked to David at the beginning. We knew that. Spawn, Spectacular Spider-Man. I think that's the final issue, or the second to last. Star Wars Jedi Knights. I don't know what that is. Mutination. Mutination is a TMNT spinoff, I think. Immortal Thor. I think that's the one where Thor dies. Thunderbolts, Doomstrike. Oh, the latest issue of Transformers. That should be cool. That will actually feature Megatron kicking butt, I think. Ultimate Black Panther, Ultimate X-Men. I'll get Ultimate X-Men. New issue of Usagi Yojimbo. Witchblade, Wolverine, World Tree, X Factor, Uncanny X-Men. Let's see. That's not many that I'm going to pick up. Let me see. Battle Beast, Godzilla X-Men, Exquisite Corpses, probably Spider-Verse versus Venomverse, at least issue 1. Gwenpool, Absolute Batman, 6. Transformers, Ultimate X-Men, maybe Uncanny X-Men. So that's between 8 and 9 books. Between 8 and 9 books. Battle Beast. Oh, that's Dan Slott's Superman. Phantom Road, new issue by Lemire. Oh, I do like him, but I can't read everything. Yeah, I like Redcoat. I don't know. I just trying to limit it. Jedi Knights has been all right. Good. I do like Star Wars. Don't forget to go back in time and pick up Ravage 2099 number 7. Past me remembered to do that. I definitely bought that. Final issue. Let's see. 3 for me, unless there's surprises at the store. Are there surprises at the store? Here, I'll draw a little to just a little, just to make it a 4-episoder, a 4-segmenter of an episode. But will it be any good? Probably not. I'm going to try to do it fast, though. Let's see how fast I can use my layout to create something. Yeah, I don't know. What are you guys picking up that looks great? What am I missing? I haven't picked up any manga lately, but maybe another week or two. I think the new volume of Vinland Saga comes out. That I'm excited for that. Good way to support the channel is clicking the thumbs up button. It goes a long way to helping grow the channel. That's true. I appreciate it when people do that. Thank you. Sometimes things arrive late here up in Hinterland. Occasionally I forgot something didn't show up, and there it is. Probably Turok number 1 if I'm feeling spicy. Yeah, I hear that that's the hot book of the week. I also hear that the blind bags of Battle Beast are something that Comic Tim would probably pick up. But you wouldn't know anything about that, I assume. Hot book! Don't care for blind bags. Battle Beast or Battle Pope? Who wins? Battle Pope. He fights dirty. Comic Tom reposted Comic Tim's chat with Dinesh. Oh, that's good. Congrats on getting that. Wait, Guy Delisle has a new book? Muybridge? Oh, that's exciting. Thank you for the heads up. I did not know. Big fan of Guy Delisle. Thank you. Alex Raymond made Flash Gordon work purely on the strength of his art. Yeah, that's true. Like, the ideas are kind of generic sci-fi stuff, but like, yeah, that's just an exceptional art. Exceptional. I was so worried that I couldn't like decide on something for Trash Movie Bonanza, and then tonight it just hit me like a bag of rocks. I want to talk about Event Horizon. I want people to know that that's actually a really fun movie. Anybody see any good movies lately? Or TV? I will say that like the two things I'm enjoying the most right now are The Last of Us and Andor. And The Last of Us is so good. But Andor, for me, that's exceptional TV. That's just, boy, I love it. It's probably not for everybody, I guess, but I love it. So good. Should talk to my sister about it. We like watching some of the same stuffs. I think I've heard of Mr. In Between, but I've never seen that. Have I considered Neil Adams' movie? What movie did he make? I feel like I've heard that he made a movie, but I don't, or worked. Oh, right. It was that, not like Starman. That's the name of another movie, but it was something like that, right? Yeah, that was pretty weird. Somebody had a tweet about Andor going like, Mon Mothma should have known that her speech wasn't going to be helpful and she should have just like ran away. And I was like, well, that kind of misses the point of what a rebellion is. Oh yeah, I did watch the first episode of The Rehearsal. That's what Chrissy and I should watch tonight. That would be fun. I've also, you know what else I like? Everybody's Live with John Mulaney. I like John Mulaney a lot. It's weird, but I like that. Oh, you know what I didn't mention in the news? Maybe I'll do it next week. There were two projects that looked interesting to me. One is Sean Crystal, who has that channel Ink Pulp. He has a new book sort of teaching you art lessons called Cyan. That looked interesting. I should have had like a news item on it to have more details because I don't remember everything off the top of my head. And then there's who's the artist that did both Spawn and Philadelphia? I want to say Jason Sean Alexander. He's got a book coming up, I think, through Zoop, telling the story of Scrooge from A Christmas Carol. Both of those looked interesting. Okay, the Cyan goes live on Kickstarter in a few weeks. I'll try to remember to have that in my actual news items so that I've got some firm details for everybody. But that looked interesting. Both of those looked like interesting projects to me. I'm working on the latest Comic Tropes. I think it's a bit of a funny one. So that's fun. I think I can have it done this weekend. I've just reached out to a couple people to see if they would have any comments on it because of working on what I'm going to be talking about. If I don't hear back, I can still make my episode without, but just wanted to potentially include something special when it's possible. Yeah. So I'm glad to have that coming out. I was really having trouble thinking of what exactly I wanted to do on Trash Movie Bonanza. So I'm really excited that I thought of one that excites me. Yeah, so that'll be fun too. What else? Ian Bertram got a Kickstarter going for his art book. The art is wild. I don't feel like I know Ian Bertram very well. The research he did on the Sentry was impressive. He found an old webpage that had the history of the marketing and everything. Well, I mean, and so kudos to them for most of that. I still remembered because it came out at a time when I was reading Wizard, so I knew it. But it was that page did a great job of documenting it all in one place in chronological order. So I wanted to give it a shout out. I hope it gives the person that put it together some satisfaction that it's still being seen years after he put it out and together. Or I don't know that it's a he now that I say that. Oh yeah, Sam Neill it's a good role for him. I haven't done an episode on Jack Davis, no. Or just Mad in general, no. Mad is definitely fit into the history of several people, but yeah. I don't have Apple TV, unfortunately. I can't afford to have every streaming service, basically. Yeah, frustrating. Appreciate all this feedback on different things, though, folks. That's nice. I said I was going to draw fast, and then I sort of slowed down, didn't I? Dumb. It's like I lied. Like it, but not quite. The studio is amazing. They spend Apple's money freely. I didn't even realize the second episode on One Takes was a one take itself. Oh, fun. That's cool. The allure of complex shaping proved too strong. But again, I'm only talking about the comic. I have no comments on the Thunderbolts movie. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. So no comments on that movie. I'm only talking about the Thunderbolts comic, not the movie. Are these likenesses even good enough for you to quite tell what I'm doing here. I intentionally did not use any like reference from, what do you call it, like the movie that I'm referencing here. Maybe I just gave it away by even saying that much. I don't know. Hell yeah, I am. Hell yeah, I am. I was trying to anyway. Maybe I should have zoomed in more before I started drawing this for all of you. But I just was trying to sort of do it kind of quick and without like referencing it. But it occurs to me that like maybe I should be using reference if I'm going to be, drawing a super famous movie star twice. I don't know. I don't want everything I do to look overly referenced. So it's like I try to break myself out of these bad habits, but I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know how to be a good artist. Just a great one. They're great. Those artists that draw sinners are great people. Are there any good movies coming out this weekend? I didn't see anything that came out this past week that I think I needed to see, so I didn't go to the movies. Is there anything coming out this week? I just like going to the movies for a break, for an emotional break. Smokestack Bros, Sinners. Let's see. I was thinking that Thunderbolts might be one of the big two comics that I've met all the creators on. Wow. Oh, so you mean like you've met Kurt Busiek and Mark Bagley? Huh. That's cool. That is cool. Just to be clear, I was talking about the comic, not the movie. I'm only talking about the comic. Whatever happens in the movie, that's spoiler territory. I'm not going to touch it. Nice. You know what I need to see that's in Seattle, Dave? Because I haven't had any free time. I still need to see that history of Asian comics exhibit that's at the Seattle Museum of Pop Culture. That's what I need to see. But yeah, Sinners is a movie that could definitely be watched multiple times and enjoyed heartily. Very, very impressive. I've recommended that one so strongly to people. And you know what? It's nice to see that there are still movies that succeed based on word of mouth. I think Sinners is a good example of that in recent years. So basically, if I was going to, I think I did a better job on this likeness over here than this one, but whatever. I was trying to draw the same person twice, and I've never drawn him before. And if you were doing this for an actual book, you'd probably do a bunch of studies to be confident in your ability. But I just I'm kind of winging it here. And I definitely black out their suits completely just to have a big dark, I'll do a little of it before I call it a night. And then I'll eat some dinner. I don't know what. I don't want to spend any money tonight. I'm more stressed about money than typically. I'll just share. It's the end of the show. The only people that watch this long are people that are super invested. Yeah. Chrissy and I aren't going to lose our homes or anything like that. But unfortunately, Chrissy's job that she's been at forever, she's furloughed. So we don't have nearly as much money coming in as we typically do. So yeah, we're not planning any actual trips or anything right now. That's for sure. Well, I say that there's one that's probable in October, but not international. Like one of my friends is getting married, so there's a good chance that I'll go to that. And then maybe because it's happening so super close to New York Comic Con, I might be able to justify sort of seeing him, maybe seeing some family for a few days, and then New York Comic Con, but lump it all into one trip. But aside from that, just I'm sure you guys are dealing with the same. It's everything's so expensive right now. If you go to the grocery store, I don't know how people can justify eating out, even fast food these days. It's so expensive. I look at DoorDash, and I won't say that we haven't done it at all, but Chrissy and I used to do DoorDash maybe once or twice a week or something. And now I think that it might be more once a month. You know what I mean? It's so expensive for something like Taco Bell. Are there any fast food restaurants? I don't eat fast food enough to know this for sure, but are there any fast food restaurants that still have essentially a dollar menu for a burger or a sandwich? Is there anything like that these days? I don't think that there is, but maybe somebody. I can't say that I've been to Arby's or anything like that, so I don't know. Yeah, delivering it is so expensive, because if I did, I'm gonna give the guy a tip, but then they also charge you a delivery fee. It's so hard. Times are tough all around. My partner and I are actually doing okay, and we've almost eliminated my medical debt from my Beckett's disease. That's good to hear. Thanks for some positivity. I'm trying to be positive. I really am. I'm trying extra hard to be positive right now because, just being stressed about money and stuff makes me want to try to focus on the positive. We got some somewhat not how do I describe it? Chrissy had a doctor's appointment, and I won't go into the details because that's not my story to tell, but it was a fairly positive meeting. It wasn't we were told all your problems are gone. It was just they gave us some hope, and I was cool, nice. I could use that. Thank you. He was nice. He was a nice doctor. I liked him. Chrissy liked him, I think. I'm probably getting too personal. Work is pretty good. I like my coworkers at work. It's fun to be there most of the time. I mean, sometimes you're a little stressed because you're multitasking or something, but nice people. What else is positive? I think TV is really strong right now. The little bit that I'm watching, which, like I said, it's 2 shows that I watch regularly. Wow, I have never gotten delivery. But the other thing is, Gene, you do live in a little bit more of a smaller town, so you probably don't have that many fast food places that would even be very close to you. So that's good. Thanks for the positivity. Buongiorno. Glad to catch you up. Seen my early work shift. Oh, you're so nice. I think we need a comics and coffee on Wednesday. You know what? I've been working each Wednesday for the last couple of weeks, but let me check my schedule real fast because there's a possibility that I'm not working on Wednesday. Wait a minute. Is today Monday? Actually, I probably am, dude. Where's my schedule? Favorites. Wednesday 5-4. No, darn it. I do work. I work at my day job with this Wednesday. I'm sorry, man. I would love to catch up. I guess, well, you want to get your comics on Wednesday. I was going to say I could go on Thursday. Yeah. Takeout, but takeout saves you the delivery fees and the tip. So, like, yeah. But even then, like, isn't just food expensive now? I used to get the occasional pizza delivered, but there's a good place in walking distance now. That's kind of fun. And hey, it's good to walk, you know, burn off some of the calories. You'd be down for Thursday? All right, because that would be much more relaxing than, say, like rushing over to the comic shop during my 1 hour lunch break on Wednesday the next day. Yeah. All right, I'll talk to you. Food is bonkers. Yeah, food and gas. Yeah, I have no idea how that would even work. So that one I don't take seriously. I can stretch one takeout meal to 2. That's your power. You're the Jesus of takeout food. One time I had a coworker get DoorDash for KFC that was within walking distance of our job. Oh my God. Yep. Yo hablo español solamente. Solamente. Sí, solamente español. Inglés. I have never used DoorDash. You guys are smart. But it's like, you know, when it sort of started, that gig economy stuff, like it was still sort of reasonable is all I was going to say. You know, if you just order, you know, something that's, you know, a deal or whatever at a McDonald's or a Taco Bell. I don't think I ever used those, but, you know, I know those places used to have sort of specials on delivery apps. And the fee would only be, you know, like $1 or something like that when it started. So you'd go like, okay, every once in a while, this is still like an indulgence that I don't need, but it felt reasonable. But I look at it now and I'm just like, I don't know how I can justify spending, you know, a minimum of $6 more on top of the prices of what it already is. I just can't do it. And it makes me think like, well, you know who does it is like the people that like are already having a tough time in their economic situations. Oh my God. You know what made me feel so angry? Like it was when I discovered that there were places that would rent furniture to people like in tough economic situations at like really high finance rates. That was so depressing to learn because I was like, oh, nothing will keep like somebody in poverty more than paying for like a couch and a TV, you know? Whereas like if you didn't like offer to rent that stuff, these people just would like have no choice but to go without for like 2 or 3 months, and then they could afford to buy it. Oh, I just think that that's not a good business. I could never work in the business of renting people basic necessities at high interest rates. That makes me so hot to think about, like so angry. You know, if you wanted to rent a big screen TV for the Super Bowl, fine. I guess I get that. But that's not what they're there for. Scamming rental furniture companies was a cottage industry where I'm from in Eastern Oregon. It just makes me so mad. Like when I learned about that the first time, I was like, what? People rent a couch? I was like, is it like super cheap? It's somewhat cheap, but there's a high interest rate. What? Oh no, that's no good. I mean, maybe if you just like had ruined your credit and you wanted to like recover it by having a loan, I guess like you could get a loan on like a piece of furniture. Maybe that would be something that could like help somebody, but otherwise I feel like it's just taking advantage of people. I hate the idea of taking advantage of people. I like the idea of helping and informing and educating. It's just not hard to be nice or to be kind. It's just not hard. Oh, yeah, payday loans, right. Yeah, getting a little bit of money ahead of time. Ooh. when I had a DoorDash pass, I felt the need to use it a lot. And that's what they're going for. Yeah. Let's see. I enjoy walking to get all my food. I'm fortunate to live in a city. I've never had delivery. Going out and actually talking to clerks and staff keeps me in a community. There's a lot of places outside of the US that I've visited that make it so much easier to be healthy and thrifty on certain things. A lot of Europe, a town will sort of still have a section within walking distance, like that's called usually an old town, the old town part of town, where they'll have a farmer's market or a bazaar or both. And, so you can walk and get fresh food that's only going to last a day or two, but that's all you need because you can just always walk and get it. And you can get it at an affordable price because there's no extra transportation costs being added to it. And you get the benefit of getting a little bit of exercise. I've found that, when I visited Japan, in the city, first of all, like if you go to like a 7-Eleven as an example, they'll have healthy options and they'll be affordable. But if you go into the more rural areas, again, they'll have like within walking distance, as long as the town isn't too sort of dead because of like, just lowering birth rates. But if like it's a reasonable sized town, they'll have usually like, a farmer's market or something within walking distance. And I just love that idea of, being able to walk and support your community and get fresh food. But like everywhere I've lived, even when I'm sort of in the city, we have not only a big refrigerator, but sometimes even a freezer. And we go to the grocery store or Costco and we buy like big amounts and we keep it for a while. And that can be affordable, but it is kind of funny to think of like just how much stuff we get at once. It's silly. It's very silly. Is there a reason you don't use a brush for inking? It would probably go faster. Do you just like the marker? Well, it's a brush pen, so it's a hybrid of what you're talking about, just to be clear. Would a brush be faster? If I had a good setup, then potentially yes. I do like playing with them. Seattle, yet expensive, is very convenient for walking to get food and groceries. Seattle downtown is not bad. I agree. There is an old town in my city. Everything is more upscale expensive. Oh, I'd be curious to know what city that is. That's interesting. I've got some friends who moved to Poland about 10 years ago, and they just walk to the old town section and get groceries for the day or the next 2 days. And it's very affordable and it gives them some exercise. It sounds really lovely, to be honest. Oh, I've got an idea for this. I should wrap it up in a sec because I want to have some food and relax, but I've got one idea. All right. You can basically imagine that I black out all this stuff, right? You can just sort of imagine that for a moment. I'm going to grab something. It's probably not going to look that good, but you'll get the idea of what I'm going for. Let me see here. This and this and this. I'm grabbing some Copics, some Copic colored pens. Here we go. I'm not going to finish this. This was practice, but it's giving me, I just want to experiment with something here to see what it would look like if I was going to do this as a finished piece. So it's going to start with me adding essentially some spot color, and then I'm going to do something to it. Okay, so that's the bit of red. And this will be a bit of blue. Just a touch. Just enough. There's several things I should be doing if I was making this better. First of all, I would have sort of mapped out my pencil art a little better, because that just would have helped me with proportions and everything. I don't think it's perfect in that regard, but I also would have erased some of these pencil marks, because now they're sort of, I'm just putting color on top of them, but you can probably still see them a little bit. It just, not a great effect, but that's okay, because I'm just, like I say, I'm just experimenting and practicing techniques. So there I go with that. And then I've got, this is the fun thing that you can do with Copics, is you can use the fact that they're alcohol based to blend them. I probably grabbed too dark of a gray. But that's okay, whatever. I'm just going to see what it looks like. Sorry that I'm out of the frame that you're looking at. Just my shoulder, my bad shoulder. But I'm just kind of curious. Yeah, I wish I had a much lighter gray just to see what that would have looked like. But that's okay. Huh. It's interesting. Yeah. See, if it was a really light gray, this would look cooler. But you could just sort of put some shadows on what you're doing. Yeah. And you could still see some color through it. Well, whatever. All right. That's the idea. And then this would be all black, and I'd have to finish the hand, I just realized. But whatevs. I tried something, and I failed. The moral is, never try. Thank you for the super chat. I hope you were ready for a great summer, Chris and Chrissy. We'll do our best to take care of our health and take care of each other. Thank you for the kind words. I had a fun one. Thank you to my guest, David Pepose, for showing up and talking about his process for comics. Definitely consider giving a look to the books that he's putting out right now. Let's see, Space Ghost, Speed Racer, Captain Planet, and final issue of Cable. Let's see. What else? Thank you, all of you, for being here, for your super chats and for your jokes and just for your conversation. Both starting and responding. It makes it feel like there's a back and forth that I really, really enjoy personally. I had a good time tonight. I am going to go get something or other to eat. Probably have to make something simple, but that's okay. And I'll be back next week. And in the meantime, I'm hard at work on producing a Comic Tropes. It is a deep dive into some history, but I also think it has a lot of funny stuff within it. So it isn't just a review of a silly single Golden Age superhero. It's a piece of history, but it's got a lot of humor in it. I hope you like it. Yes, thank you. And Erwin, I believe you have a Kickstarter going on now too, right? So let me end, because I just saw you here. Sewer Boys 2. If you look that up, Sewer Boys with a Z 2 is up on Kickstarter, and that's by the Long Beach Drink and Draw crew, a jam book. They've sent me some of the stuff they've done before. Just happens to be a great group of different artists, and they do really creative stuff together. And today, every day. So yeah, definitely consider taking a look at that. I think, am I right that Jim Mafood did like a pinup or something for you guys this time? So that's nice too. Sorry I don't get to plug everything for everyone all the time, but it just popped in my head and I wanted to mention it. All right, everybody. I had a great time. Double salute to end the show. Boop. Keep reading comics. Take care of yourselves and each other. Peace and love.